80.
I'll try that.
You're unmuted.
Because I have a tendency to want to elaborate on things. I'm just gonna read it like a script,
My dad's a
but I don't drip on you guys.
he was second in command down in Detroit area. Okay. Professional.
Guess it's just my the way I think, you know. They don't just don't want to waste people's time. That's all. Believe it or not, I guess you'd probably be surprised to hear me say this, but I'm not always sure people care what I have to say, so it's like there and get the
12
just give it to the
seconds.
right. Because like I do this.
Here, okay, I got your screen turned. over. Can you read that?
Yeah, unless there's.
Are you sure?
Audience. Oh, yeah. Eyes aren't any shot. I'm just saying, same thing I said.
Give it 10. I'm having LASIK.
I'd like to call this meeting to order, the Benzie County Board of Commissioners. Today is September 12th, 2023. We're in the Frank Walter House Boardroom. Roll call, please.
Cunningham,
Here.
Janot,
Here.
Markey,
Here.
Nye,
Here.
Roloffs,
Here,
Sauer,
Here.
Worsakki excused.
please stand for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. And I would ask that we please remember the families that were affected of the tragedy of 9/11, which was celebrated yesterday. Dear Lord, thank you for the opportunity to serve the citizens of Benzie County. I ask for your guidance with the decisions we will make today. Please keep all of our public safety personnel safe and free from harm. I ask this in the name of your son. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Today's agenda in front of you. Are there any changes, please? If-
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second, Cunningham.
Motion and support. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? So move. Approval of the minutes from August 22nd.
Make the motion to approve the minutes from August 22nd.
It was a correction that Rhonda had given me, Commissioner
Oh,
Nye.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it was just a change of one word from reorganization to reorganizing. I would support with that said.
Motion and support to approve the minutes from last meeting as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed? So moved. Brings us to our first public input. Is there anybody who'd like to speak this morning? Good morning, ma'am. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
My name is Doreen Carter. I live in Benzonia, and I come before you as the president of Animal Welfare League of Benzie County, also known as the AWL. It's been a while since we've given you an update, so here we go. For those of you who do not know about us, the AWL was formed 47 years ago in 1976 as a nonprofit organization. We are all volunteer-based. All of the donations we receive go back into supporting animals. During this journey, we have spent over $1 million assisting our community members, our local animal shelter, local dog, cat, and horse groups in and around our surrounding county. We have assisted with approximately 10,000 spay and neuters since we started our program back in 1980. While we assisted the Benzie County Animal Shelter, we repaired the old building at the county dump site, built a new animal shelter, made improvements to the current building such as generator, air conditioner, septic, roof, truck, painting, fence, flooring, ceiling, and a vast number of other things. Well, a little over a year ago, I seen a post on Facebook in that the shelter was in need of kitten chow. We know that it's important for the kittens to have this food. So I called the shelter and asked if they still needed the kitten chow. I got a reply of yes. When I was asked if anything else was needed, a quick response of no. So I informed the director I'd be over after and drop off the kitten chow. When I arrived at the shelter after normal business hours, I found that the locks had been changed and the AWL was no longer having access to the building after over 4 decades of serving the community and this county. A few weeks later, the AWL had an event to attend. I went to the shelter to pick up some of our paperwork and informational material to display at the event. When I arrived at the shelter, I told staff that I was in need of something out of a tote that was stored in the kitchen cabinet. They informed me that all of our items were in the garage and they needed to be removed from the building. I removed them from the building and went on my way. We took that as a sign that the AWL was no longer needed, wanted, and welcomed at the shelter. This was an unfortunate situation after our longstanding history. But that gave us a chance to regroup and rethink what we needed to do, what we needed to focus on, and we moved forward. We found 11 animal rescue organizations and animal shelters in and surrounding Benzie County and gave them each a gift of $5,000. We had been following the wonderful things these organizations were doing and seeing they were in need, so we assisted them with their cause. We most recently donated to some of these organizations again and added a local wildlife rehabilitation center and a raptor center that are located in Benzie County. These organizations told us that they were going to use the money for spaying and neutering, medical expense, medication equipment, and many other things with their day-to-day chores. Also, we are working with the city of Frankfort. They have plans to put in a dog park. Well, we are funding the entire project with the stipulation that the dog park be named the Deacon Dog Park. This is because Ruth Deacon, a longtime resident of Frankfort, member of the Animal Welfare League board, and one of the educators that would go into the schools and teach children about animal care and how to raise pets, left us a wonderful donation when she passed away. So yes, we continue to help the voiceless and which are animals of Benzie County. We'll give you more updates when they're available. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Dr. Ann Abear from St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church, and I'm here representing Faith in Action. And we have a group of churches in the county that work together to put forward things that we're interested in helping move along. And 2 of those areas are internet and housing. I know you all are working in those areas already, but I live in Benzonia, and I have been shocked this summer how slow my internet has been. And I'm right in the middle of everything. So I know there's more work that needs to be done. And I know there are places in this county that don't have it yet. So we are advocating that monies be put forward for that so that people can have better internet access. In addition, we are also interested in housing. I know some housing efforts are moving. We would like to see more. There's a great need, I know, in this whole country, in many places in this country for housing. So more money is coming to the county by the end of the year. We believe there's room to spend on housing and internet out of those monies, and would urge you to vote to do that. We ask that you be ambitious, that you think big, and if you need support and help with political will to do this, we are willing to help. So thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Sir?
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
John Troop from the Benzie Conservation District. I've got a couple of brief updates for everyone. Let's see, chronologically, tomorrow, I hope the commissioners have received an email from our office, we're hosting, along with our district conservationist, what's known as the local work group meeting. And so this is the opportunity for the public too, for us as a community to tell the Natural Resource Conservation Service what our local priorities are for natural resource protection. Then our district conservationist, Scott, takes those priorities and says, okay, what NRCS grants and contracts that they fund will address those issues, and then they get an elevated scoring on a local scale. So this is it. This is our time to tell NRCS what we want to see happening in Benzie County, and this includes agricultural lands and forest lands. So that meeting is tomorrow at 1 o'clock at the Mills Community House. If you can't make it, there's also a survey right on our website, benziecd.org. You can take that and let us know what your priorities are. Next week from this Thursday, we will be hosting our September board meeting, which is where we will be voting on our fiscal year 2023-2024 budget. So public comment invited. Let's see, further out, fall seedling sale is happening right now. So if you're interested, we have a variety of native conifer species and seeds and conservation products. Orders are due by September 21st, pickups October 6th at our downtown office in Beulah. And then this is just kind of longer term, but folks might have seen we were recently awarded an EAGLE, Department of Energy, Great Lakes and Environment Watershed Council grant that will go into effect in 2024. This is expressly for the purpose of updating the Platte River Watershed Protection Plan. It's about 10 years old. It's about when they're considered kind of outdated. And so there again, there will be an opportunity to comment about your priorities for protection in the Platte River watershed. So that's a stay tuned. And it's been a fun summer, busy summer. We are wrapping up programs for the year and putting together our annual report unbelievably already. So I'll be back soon with some updates from the year. That's all I've got today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? We'll close public comment and move on to finance. So I would look for a motion to approve $1,217,693.78.
I'll make that motion. No, Evan didn't show.
Marky will support.
Motion and support. Any further discussion? One of the larger ones we've seen in a while. So
Yeah.
it's that time of the year. Roll call, please.
Not
Yes.
Markey,
Yes.
Nye,
Yes.
Roloff,
Yes,
Sauer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes,
motion carried.
thank you. Brings us to elected officials and department heads. Anybody? Jesse, please. You're next, Sheriff.
Morning, Jesse Zylstra, Solid Waste and Recycling. Didn't prepare a memo for the packet, but I wanted to be available. If there's any questions that I can answer.
Well, I'll start. Thank you for the heads up on the ag
I was gonna mention that, yeah.
and tractor thing. I think some of the neighbors took advantage of it. And thank you for picking up that chair that my lucky neighbors decided to leave beside the road. So
Yeah, that,
appreciate that kind of work.
that was delivered to Northern Disposal, no cost.
One other question I had for you, and I guess I can ask you now. There's some electronic stuff at Lane Township.
Okay,
It's a whole lot. I don't know if we pick it up and store it or what. It's a couple of printers and I think one of the big towers. So.
Okay.
Otherwise I can push it off and I can hang on to it and give it to you next summer.
it'd be June 8th.
June 8th would be the quickest.
Well, that'd be the next collection event.
Okay,
We do have a bin that gets cycled out of the garage for those kind of items.
okay.
So if you either deliver them or I can swing by the hall and
I'll
arrange
deliver
picking
them.
up. Okay. So let me know
Right out
when.
here then.
Yep.
Okay,
The green roll-off bin just for the government center's use.
all right. Thank you.
You bet.
and I have a question, Chair.
Sure.
Jesse, can you give us like maybe a summary or a sentence or two on the MMP where you are on that
So
and what it
it
is for the
hasn't,
public?
sure. MMP is Materials Management Planning. And that's a complete overhaul of our current solid waste management plan. The director of Eagle has not initiated that process yet. I expect that to be in September. That was what was announced.
Mhm.
September 20th is the statewide webinar. Open to the public. So that'll be Eagle's next update. They haven't had a work group for 2 months in preparation for this process. It's going to be a 3-year process. Once it's initiated by Eagle, this board will have 180 days to file a notice of intent. Should Benzie decide to conduct their own planning. 120 or 180 days after that, we have to have our planning committee, CAA, DPA, all of that established and approved by Eagle. At that point, grant funding is released. And then the 3-year process begins.
And the grant funding you're talking about, is that the non-competitive money?
It is.
Okay. And do you know if in your planning that you and Commissioner Morsecki's not here right now, but were you working with other counties at all to leverage the additional 10 grand?
We've discussed it. It sounds like Leelanau and Grand Traverse both prefer to do it independently, which leaves Benzie to do theirs independently. Manistee County is unique in that they don't have a countywide program,
Right.
so that's segmented. I don't see the benefit of working with even multiple, more additional agencies. Plan hasn't been visited for 20 years. So we're 24 years now. So it's going to be an overhaul, but it's, allowing us to choose which directions Benzie County moves forward.
And do you have people or companies identified within the county that can be of service and assistance in helping with the planning?
So just last week, that actual list, there's a 11-member panel, 1 township executive, 1 compost or organics
Right.
processor. So I'm working on identifying those interested. The benefit of doing a tri-county plan would have been a lot of those folks would have been the same people, less meetings for them.
Consistency too.
Yeah. But Leelanau pretty well flat out said no. Grand Traverse redid theirs about 10 years ago, and it won't have to be updated very extensively. So there was no benefit or, there was no good or bad necessarily in it. Take it or leave it for them.
Are you familiar with the organization Coalition Proud?
No.
No. Okay. I'll email you that information. That might be some contacts for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Jesse, just to follow up, because it was brought up, the monies that you're talking about, these non-competitive grant monies, is that to write the plan? Or do you have to write the plan in order to be eligible for those funds?
We would have to write a draft plan
Okay,
before the funds are available.
so the monies they're not to be used to write the plan. They're going to be used for other purposes.
I believe they can be used to offset the actual initial draft. But then as soon as that 36-month period is initiated after we establish our planning committee, EPA, and the CAA, that's when those monies actually get released. So moving forward, there'd be multiple public comments, township meetings, monthly meetings for this planning committee. So that money would be able to be spent for those purposes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you.
Sheriff?
Morning, Sheriff Rosa. 2 quick things. Chairman, I'd like to thank you and all that were involved last Friday night with the salute to service Benzie Frankfurt game at the high school of Benzie. It was awesome weather, great event. I thought it was well attended. And I appreciate being part of that. Very much so. That, and we have once again passed our MDOC yearly inspection at the jail with flying colors. Everything's in order. Everything's good. I want to report to you that. That's good news. You have any questions for me?
How's the staffing at the jail?
We are one shot. We have two that are in the process of completing the prereqs to begin. And we have one more that we have to pick. We did interviews last week. So if all goes well, knock on wood, be fully staffed. There will be training, of course, throughout the up and coming months, but our staffing levels are slowly regaining. As well as the road. I was hoping to get the new deputy down here that we just hired, Deputy Suey, but they're on the road and they're busy. So both sides of the house are looking really good. Roadside, jail side. We're coming back. We were down for a little bit, but we're coming back. We have some really good candidates. So thank you.
Good to know. Anybody else?
If I happen to be asked about the progress towards 24-hour road patrol, what should I tell folks?
My hope is that by spring, I don't see it happening before that.
Primarily personnel.
It's all personnel. We have 2 vacancies and those get filled, but you don't just put someone in a vehicle and tell them to go, take a shift. There's a lot of training involved. So that's my hope, is that by school let out at the latest, we should be up and running. Yep.
Good, thanks.
Thank you.
You.
Any other department heads? Alrighty. Let's start action items. Consider approving phase 1 kennel yard project for animal control.
We've talked about it over the last couple of years. There are various things at animal control that need to be done to bring things up to snuff. One thing that's been talked about for many years is the fact that the animal control building is on a well, and we need to hook up to the village water and sewer. We've had some issues where that well is having issues, the hot water heater is having issues. The other issues up there is erosion. So I don't know, all of you have been up there and you see how the kennel yard is built and the fact that there's hills. So we have a lot of erosion issues as well for that area. And so in capital as well as in the ARPA, we've set aside funding for this overall project to fix the erosion, the kennel yard, and to hook up in water and sewer. So this today in front of you is kind of that phase 1 or that step 1 in getting that project done. This is excavation. This is readying the area for the hookup. This is working to fix the erosion issues by adding a retaining wall. So that's what's in front of you today. It's AJ's Excavating. We did receive a second bid from Elmer's. AJ's Excavating is comparable and is local to Benzie County. They're also already working on the lower level expansion of the sheriff's office. So they're here on the campus already. Like I said, there is funding set aside for this project. There'll be more phases of the project coming before you to really do the total kit and caboodle, but this is to get things going before the snow flies, because whether we like it or not, it's probably going to fly soon. And so we need to start digging in the ground.
Thanks for that.
I know. Sorry to burst everyone's bubble.
I wasn't going there yet.
Yeah.
So.
It's still coming down liquid form.
Yeah.
this morning, Yeah.
Katie, you said that there's 4 phases. So this $51,000 is what, for phase 1?
So yeah, so this is all of the excavation for the area to build that retaining wall and to get in the ground to get the hookup ready. So we won't be hooking up just yet, but it's getting those things ready. So this is really the groundwork. I said more phases though, not 4. So we have to do the official hookup and then we'll have to put the kennel yard back together. So the fencing, the ground, we're looking at a turf ground for the kennels because then the dogs, there's less digging. It's easier to clean. If we had some sort of issue with a disease of dogs, it's easier to clean these. The turf has a very long warranty, so that's a positive as well. It's a shelter turf that a lot of things are going to. And so those things will be coming before you, but this is to get at least that part going where we're digging in the ground and getting those things ready before the snow flies.
Good.
I'm sorry. And we've anticipated the additional cost and those have already been budgeted also.
Yeah, so we have budgeted $130,000 for this total project. And so this is 51,000.
Thank you.
We
Brenda?
had prior conversations about the state making requirements about kennel runs and separation of animals due to different things. Is the site adequate as it stands to accommodate those changes? I hate to put money into a location if we can't see it through to meet the state's requirements.
Sure. So
Yeah, so the way that right now we have 2 yards. At this point, when we do this project, we'll have full of 4. So at that point, we'll be able to separate and use one side for quarantine, other side for adoptable animals, if you will. As far as the layout of the land up there with building and everything, we won't be able to obviously fully do that. The state's aware of that as far as doing individual runs. But what we have moving forward with what we're going to be doing will work.
We know physically, I'm sure we know physically, where is the existing sewer line at?
If you look at where the garage door is at, everybody's aware of like where the garage door is at. Right off to the right hand side, right there is where the septic tank is. And so I would assume that they're going to use that tank as a
like a holding tank.
Holding tank?
like a holding tank, and then I would assume the line would come like straight down that driveway.
Okay,
I'm not 100% sure on that, but
so the existing sewers runs,
I believe the sewer runs over kind of near the jail.
Yeah,
I'm
the
not
sewer
100%
runs
sure.
down and kind of around the sheriff's office and
Okay.
jail.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the gas line that runs up the yard, sewer runs around the what?
Yeah.
It's like a whole spider web underground.
right?
Wow.
And Katie, I know that we're going to be talking about the budget later today, but hooking up to the village water, we've anticipated those costs in our budget.
Yeah, in the animal control fund, there are that you'll see that line's a lot higher. We've put in a few $1,000s for that, yes, based on the increases and the hookup. You'll
So-
notice the water and sewer lines in the whole budget are a lot higher across the board.
There's a recommended motion in your packet if somebody would like to make that
But
motion.
I got one more question. if you
Okay.
don't mind. If AJ's obviously is gonna do it this fall. What kind of contingency do we have once the yard's tore up the animals?
So
Somewhere else,
we're
or
gonna work with surrounding counties on where to
the housing?
house
Yeah.
dogs if we need to. We can house them for a couple of days, inside. I mean, not the most ideal thing to do, but
Right.
we can do so. Any of the adoptable dogs, if we have any during that time, we will try to transfer out and or get them adopted as quick as possible. But we've already kind of spoke with surrounding areas to see what we can do as far as just helping us out during the day. Currently, right now, we have an agreement with Grand Traverse. When they get full or need help, we house their animals and then vice versa. So we'll work with them a little bit. If we get something during the day where we can't house them, take them up there, we'll take it up to Cherryland and they'll help us out a little bit. But we're gonna try to do our best throughout the day. Find the owner of the animal, kind of like what we do now, but that's probably a little bit harder.
Curious, because I'm not gonna do this in 12 hours.
Right.
Thank you.
Anyone wants to foster a dog
No, I got enough.
or a kid?
And what?
Kitty.
Oh, kitty. Well,
And Chair, I have a question. Just because Animal Welfare League was here and spoke, And I understand that you said we have everything budgeted, but then by what Commissioner Sauer said, you know, if there's extra funds that are needed. It sounds like Animal Welfare League, their mission matches what animal safety and everything that ours does through the county. So I'm wondering if it's a missed opportunity looking for, if we need extra funds, reaching out to them. I mean, just because the mission is the same, and it sounds like that is something that would be fiscally responsible to have a working relationship. And I know I don't understand all the history. I know that I'm just speaking fiscally.
Before that's answered, could I interject?
Yes,
That's a complicated issue
okay,
that you've not had the opportunity to sit in earlier discussions.
right,
And I think that we'd be better served to treat that outside of this meeting
okay.
than to get into it here. That would be
Okay.
my recommendation.
Well, that's why I said I understand I don't have the history, and I just don't want to miss opportunities if it's available, but I understand. Thank
And I would be hopeful that we can
Thank you.
repair the relationship also, but I think it's better served to discuss
Yeah.
that.
I don't know.
I will just say that they're welcome to give a donation, just like anybody in the community who brings things up there. But you know, it's got to be during the business days. It can't be outside of business hours. We can't have non-county employees on campus in the
Understood.
building outside of those times. We're happy to accept those donations. We hope that they feel inclined to do that. But it can't be the same old relationship as it was in the past. From a liability standpoint, from a safety standpoint, you know, they got to come to us during the working days and have those conversations.
I just want it on the record and talking.
Yeah.
Because she was here beforehand and was able to express that, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
If I could, I'll make the motion that the Board of Commissioners accepts the proposal from AJ Excavating and the not to exceed amount of 51,000 to excavate, build a retaining wall and prep for village utility connection with the funds available from ARPA funding.
Markey will support.
Motion and support. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Markey,
Yes.
Nye,
Yes.
Roloffs.
Yes,
Sauer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes,
not,
Yes.
motion carried.
thank you. Thanks, Kyle. Sheriff Rosa, would you mind?
Mhm.
They're done.
You mind?
Thank you for the opportunity. I was able to collar him here.
Good.
Oh.
That's who we are.
This is our latest road patrol hire, Dave Suey. He got out of the profession for a short time, but he has a desire to serve, so he's back. And he has 16 years of experience in Grand Traverse County prior to this. And we're ecstatic to have him on our team.
Privileged to have him.
I
appreciate that. I look forward to it.
Good.
I like
All right, welcome aboard.
Looking forward to new
Nice.
challenges. I don't want to go back to Grand Traverse County is where I came from and looking for something new. So,
Mhm.
I like it.
welcome.
We appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a 9:30 scheduled, so at this time, I'd like to welcome Ms. Heidi Justine, Executive Director, Area Agency on Aging of Northwest Michigan.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. I've been with the Area Agency on Aging as the Executive Director for about 4 years. We have not been in front of you since pre-pandemic. So I'd like to talk a little bit about our agency, what we do, how we work with your county with Benzie Senior Resources, and just give you an update on what we've been doing and FY22 performance, if that's okay. First, I'd like to thank Chairman Roloffs for his service on our board. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We are governed by a 13-member board. 10 are county commissioners from the 10 counties that we serve or county appointees, and then we have 3 at large. We were established in 1974 under the Older Americans Act, and the premise of there was sweeping social change at that time in the 60s and the 70s to really make sure that there's a safety net for older adults and caregivers to be independent in their homes as long as possible. And so with that Older Americans Act brings federal funding for programming to help seniors stay in their homes, to have meal service like Meals on Wheels, some evidence-based programming to help them stay healthy, as legal services, a variety of funding that comes from the federal government and the state government. Our annual plan comes before you for approval every spring. So that was recently before you, probably in June. That describes how we spend and implement that federal and state funding in the counties that we serve. So we're about an $18 million organization. 70% of our revenue comes from Medicaid. It's a program to keep seniors provide nursing level services in the home. And then the 30% is that federal and state money out of the Older Americans Act that gets distributed and pushed out. We are quasi-governmental. We have significant oversight by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. They do come in and assess us regularly. We have multiple contracts with them. So there's a lot of standards that we abide by. We have approximately 40 employees. Most of them are nurses and social workers. They go out into the homes. They do assessments of individuals that need services, and then they do care planning and follow along support. So that's kind of a little bit about our organization. Our mission is to serve and advocate for older adults, adults with disabilities, and caregivers by supporting their independence, dignity, and quality of life. We do this through 4 buckets of work. The first is a community needs assessment and planning to make sure there's a network of services available. So that plan that comes before you describes that needs assessment and a lot of how we push out funding into the community organizations. We're a pass-through organization. So every year we pass through money to Benzie Senior Resources to support their meals programs. We contract with Benzie Senior Resources to do in-home services. We have a staff of nurses and social workers on the phone all day that answer questions from the 10 counties of aging needs. So what do I do with mom? Mom's no longer able to stay at home. Dad has progressing dementia, and we support these community members. And then we have our programming that offers alternatives to nursing home placement. So we will actually put nursing home level care in the home and staff it through contracts with agencies. Over the last year or 2 years, our priorities really have been level setting from the pandemic. We saw a tremendous amount of change with the pandemic, not being able to go into homes, having to restrict care plans because agencies weren't able to go in and provide care. We saw we were inundated with calls for support. Our call volume went up over 30%. And so we've really just been trying to reestablish and kind of level set the organization, our staff, get our care plans back out into the field, making sure that we're having excellent clinical quality. In fiscal year 22, as an organization, we passed through $2.16 million to the 10 counties for senior meals programs, $14.1 million for care management and services of older adults. We took 3,316 calls from the community on aging issues. We care managed 803 individuals in their homes, and we transitioned 63 individuals out of nursing homes back into the community. In Benzie County specifically, we spent $773.8 thousand on care and services of Benzie senior residents. We granted $267,633 to Benzie Senior Resources for their meal programming. We care managed 48 vulnerable Benzie residents, and we transitioned 7 Benzie residents out of the nursing home into the community. Any questions?
Anybody?
Just one. You having trouble hiring staff? Everybody else, I was just curious. The nurses and such.
In the care that we're providing in the community, the agencies are having significant challenges hiring direct care workers. The Medicaid budget has recently put a pay increase in that we pass through to the agencies. In terms of our own agency with our nurses and social workers, knock on wood, right now we're fully staffed. Keep it that way.
Thank you.
Yes.
Anybody else?
So on that subject, and I appreciate you being here, your relationship with the Benzie Senior Resources, it sounds like there might be some overlap when you talk about in-home care. Am I hearing that right?
There is not overlap. So we will, in a continuum of care, as a person starts to need support to stay independent in their home, Benzie Senior Resources will go in and provide personal care, homemaking, meal preparation, meals, snow plowing. So that's the base level of support. And then as a person becomes more complicated, complex, or acute, they may roll over into our programs where we put on a layer of case management, and then we will contract with Benzie Senior Resources to do the care in the home. So we work in partnership.
Thank you.
Yes.
Anybody else? Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. See you
Thank
soon.
you.
Let's move right into our 9:45. Maggie Bacon from Best Benzie.
Or no, it's okay if you
Yeah,
can't.
yeah,
That's all right.
it'll take a little while.
So is this on?
You can bend it down to you.
Hello.
There you go.
So I don't
being
know
here.
whether some of you don't remember me because you weren't here the last time I spoke to all of you, but the last time I talked to all of you, I took up a lot of your time. Today, it's a much shorter period of time. So Maggie Bacon, Best Benzie County, which is a local college access network in Benzie County. But I'm going to start with a story because I always start with a story. It's a story of a young man in Benzie County who, when he graduated from high school, he really wasn't sure what it was he wanted to do with his life. He had a job. He had friends. He was able to afford a used car. He was able to find housing with a roommate or two in the county. And so for a few years, that all worked really well for him. But when he turned about 25, he started to think about, maybe I should be thinking about making more money and potentially finding maybe more personal satisfaction in my job. So he learned about this idea of computer coding. It could have been, he decided he wanted to do more with heating and cooling. It could have been he wanted to do more with construction trades to learn more about a trade or a craft. But in his case, it really was computer coding. And he thought he actually might have a knack for it. And what was even better from his perspective a year ago was that he was eligible for this cool new program that the state was offering called Michigan Reconnect. And what Michigan Reconnect, the promise of Michigan Reconnect was free community college tuition for anyone over the age of 25 who did not already have an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree. This was his ticket, right? Northwestern Michigan Community College in Traverse City, or no, actually, I guess it's Northwestern Michigan College in Traverse City, had an information technology program that fit the bill for him. He enrolls, he meets with an advisor, he's on his way. About 3 weeks later, he comes home from work. He's got a bill for his car insurance. He owes his roommate rent in about another 3 days. And boom, there's a bill from NMC for winter tuition for $1,668. That's when he learns that Michigan Reconnect only pays for in-district tuition. I want to hear Rhonda do that louder.
That wasn't me.
Oh, it was so that's when he learns he only pays for in-district tuition. As a Benzie County resident, he is responsible for the out-of-district tuition that is an additional $139 per contact hour. If only Benzie County residents were eligible for in-district tuition. Okay, boy, you guys are a tough audience. I see nodding. So, well, they can be. But first, let's talk a little bit about Benzie County residents. 66% of the working age adults in Benzie County do not have any post-high school, after high school,
education or training. And in 2019, the American Action Forum found that one of the most interesting things about people who receive additional education, and that can mean a certificate, it can mean an associate's degree, it can mean a bachelor's degree. They end up, in particular, if they have attended a community college, they stay in the area. So one of the things that's about to happen, and this is why I'm standing before you today, is to let you know that NMC is starting to talk about how they annex Benzie County. How do we help Benzie County residents be able to pay in-district tuition? So what you're going to start to hear about shortly is NMC is doing this exploration. They are truly exploring at this point. They are not coming in. They're not telling us what we need to do. They are finding out what the interest is in Benzie County in providing in-district tuition to Benzie County residents. So they're starting with a group of community leaders. They're also going to be asking, I believe it's in October, to be able to come before all of you. And then they're actually going to hit the county in what they're calling listening sessions. They want to know, what is it that Benzie County might need in order to provide, and of course, this is where Best Benzie County comes into play. What will help create that culture of ongoing learning regardless of your age? What is that thing that will encourage people to be lifelong learners in Benzie County? It may be, and again, this is a broad stroke. It may be, there's this concept that I guess is starting to take off that's called after dark. So that, as you guys all know, that our two school districts, while there's a lot of school activities that occur after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the classrooms kind of go dark. So one of the thoughts that NMC has is, what would happen if we brought classes here to Benzie County, where those classrooms are now filled with adult learners who are, so it's kind of like creating an adult learning center, if you want to think of it that way. And I can't remember which one of you, it was either you, Bob, or you, Art, that the last time I spoke before you were talking about, well, what happened to wood shop and what happened to auto tech and what happened to the construction trades? It was you. Let me just say, there is certainly the possibility that some of those things would come back into this area, and the high schools would benefit from it, as well as the colleges would benefit from it. But what I really wanted to make sure that you were all aware of is that this was going to start to happen in the county. And I didn't want anybody on the commission to not be aware that this was happening. So, questions?
I'd have one question for you. When I've heard of this subject discussed before, it seemed like one of the components to it was an additional tax to property owners in order to subsidize it. Do I remember that correctly?
You are remembering that correctly. It does require a millage.
Okay.
I would hope the schools take a look at some of that outside learning possibilities. It started many years ago at Benzie Central. I know my oldest son was part of it. And I still know some of the kids that went through building trades and specialized in different areas and are still working there today. So it's important. And not everybody is college bound. I mean, that's what we have to be concerned about, is we still need people to change tires and work on cars and you name it. And there's room for everybody. So we have to look at those kids and try to get them situated as well.
Kids and not just kids, but also adults.
Yeah,
Those people who are going back and finding something different. And I think the thing that I want to attempt to drive home again is that when people think about, and because of their name, Northwestern Michigan College, that you think it's just college. So I really want to hit hard on the fact that NMC offers these certifications or certificate programs in construction trades, automotive. They even do something that, quite frankly, I'm thinking about taking, which has to do with drone technology. I want to learn how to operate those drones legally. But they also offer HVAC, plumbing is the other thing. They offer those certificates. So they're not just it's not just an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree. And Michigan Reconnect would pay for all of those. And again, it's about making this affordable for our county residents.
Yep.
So thank you,
Yeah,
guys.
very good. Thank you, Maggie.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. Any other questions? Thanks.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you.
Go back to action items under item B. Approve agreement for scheduling and search services for recycling.
So this is the Waste Wizard from Routeware. And what it would do is
Wizard.
embed a search bar specifically for Benzie County resources. Say you have a mattress, it'll give you the locations, the dates of those collection events. Say you have scrap metal, it'll give you the drop off locations or those individuals that I am aware of that pick up that scrap metal. Batteries, you name it. And as soon as anything is searched for and is not in the system, I'll get flagged. I can add that. So, it is industry standard. Grand Traverse, Manistee, Leelanau, Antrim, Emmett. They all have the same program. And since it's embeddable, it can go on social media. It can go on any township page. It can go on the city of Frankfurt. So it's accessible.
It's a huge enhancement for our community. Right now, Jesse's inundated with a lot of calls. Where do I take this? When do I take this?
And
This would really help Jesse and his group from having all those extra calls because folks could do it right online.
Sure.
Access it easily. It also would broaden the availability because like Jesse said, if he's notified, then he can add that information or maybe come up with a route to accommodate that specific item. It's all about learning what the community needs and then meeting those needs.
Yep.
Good.
And I agree. And I brought this to the SWAC before COVID 2019. This quote doesn't actually include the scheduling software, but it includes the possibility to add an email link or a link to a Google form, but it's all through a central search engine right on the homepage, right on our county page, or any township that wants to implement it. And I would be responsible for setting all that up. It's specifically page 6 of the packet of the product guide that we're looking at here.
Sure.
Well, I read the motion, but she went by.
Oh, hold on. I'll get you back.
Just,
There you go.
so is there an additional cost for the software besides the month?
No, it's all included.
Board of Commissioners accepts the proposal from
Routeware.
Routeware
Recollect for a website tool and wizard to enhance scheduling and information output for the recycling and waste collection events in Benzie County for the period of 3 years at a monthly rate of $203.32 and authorizes the chair to sign.
And I would support that. I had one more question. So that would support the MMP if we have,
It would support. I'm not sure how it would.
okay,
And the MMP is specifically suggesting counties statewide go to some form of this system.
okay. And it's a standard, you
It
said.
is a
for the
standard.
industry.
Routeware
Okay,
was mentioned by Eagle specifically.
perfect.
It's what our entire region uses. They're happy with that portion of it. The only reason I didn't pursue the appointment scheduler is Grand Traverse County is the only one that currently uses that and is actively looking at an alternative. So instead of locking us in for 3 years with something that may not be appropriate and is more expensive.
Thanks.
Jesse, I'm all about using technology.
So can we hold off for a second? I would like to have support for the motion before we have discussion.
We did, it was.
Did? I'm sorry, I missed it.
But what I hear you saying is it's gonna have to be an educational process to change the behavior of the community? Because they're not going to know that it's out there. So you're still going to be inundated with phone calls.
For the first few months, yes. I advertise in the Betsy Current, which has quite a broad reach. It's a free paper. I'm gonna add in there every edition that I can change. That's 16 a year. Facebook pages are pretty well attended. Got 2. I have kiosks at the majority of the physical recycling sites. It's going to be right on the website. I'd say 30 to 50% of the people that call currently have already checked the website, either to schedule an appointment, and they're not clicking open a PDF that has this information, but it's a PDF deck. It's not a simple search tool. So I don't know. In the past, that's worked just fine, but everything, including ordering your pizza, anything is done online nowadays.
So what I think I heard you say is that half the people that are contacting you already looked for that kind of information online.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So they couldn't, one guy this week, he's doing a remodel and he has an old toilet. And we have a transfer station, but really there's no recycling at Porcelain up here. But he looked all over the website. I don't have a toilet specifically listed on the website, but now I know somebody's looking for that. So I can put that into the system, transfer stations, the landfills, this area, waste haulers. And that information, it saves the public time. It saves me time. Especially in the summer with all the appointments coming in, it's not uncommon to have 50 calls a day. And I have to not only return those, but get in touch, actually physically talk to them.
Anybody else? Roll call, please.
Nye,
Yes.
Roloffs.
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes,
you're not,
Yes.
Markey,
Yes.
motion carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse.
thank you.
Item C, authorize a 3-year extension to the auditing services provided by Manor Consideration.
So the last 3 years, Benzie County has used Manor and Casterson to perform their auditing services. They've done a great work for us. We have a great relationship with them. I've preached since I've been up here that going out to bid every 5 to 7 years makes sense to me. And since we have only been with Manor Casterson for 3 years and we've enjoyed their company as far as when they're here working on our fiscal year budget, they do really great work. And based on the cost of other counties and what they're paying for auditing services, they're giving us a heck of a deal. So we're recommending that we move forward for another 3 years. Shelley Thompson, as county treasurer, agrees with that recommendation to pull them through for another 3 years. The county administrators on our listserv just did a poll. So we must all be on kind of the same schedule when it comes to auditing services. They just did a poll as to who's paying what for auditing services. And we by far are paying some of the least. Yes. They gave us they do a very good job. Now, a lot of times auditing is based on your budget and the services that are happening. So in the grand scheme of it, we have a much smaller budget than say Grand Traverse County. But they've done really great work for a good cost. They've also added additional services that they help us out with that the prior auditor wasn't doing, like the F-65 reports and such. They perform those reports for us and submit them for the state review, which is an additional help to both of our offices. So we're not having to do those extra state forms when it comes to the audit. And they do that for the cost that's within the proposal.
I would make the motion that the Board of Commissioners approves a 3-year extension to the service agreement with Manor Costerison to provide fiscal year financial auditing services subject to review by legal counsel and authorizes the chair to sign.
And I would support Cunningham. I like your descriptive in there, Katie, where you say it's totally responsive, work closely with you, and accurate.
Yes.
I mean, fabulous.
All righty.
Yes,
Any other-
is,
Go ahead.
my guess is they're gonna come back with a new agreement for the 3 years. Your
So you
cheap
guys-
Statement, I hope, make it out.
No. So you guys didn't do an agreement in the past. You just
Oh,
signed the
okay.
proposal and went with that. So I'll have legal actually prepare a true agreement for the services. Because in the past you didn't do that. You just signed the proposal and they did their thing for 3 years. So we'll make it a bit more formal than in the past. And what you have in there is the actual proposal, but those numbers won't change for the next 3 years. But then in 3 years, we'll go out to actual RFP and see, what's out
Okay.
there. And then we'll make our decision based on
They
that.
agreed at that price to extend it for the 3.
Yeah, the what's in your packet, those 3 years of numbers is what we would pay for the next 3 years. So we can accurately budget as
Okay,
well.
that's good. Thank you.
Katie, you and I had this conversation yesterday. I heard what you said, that we're paying less than some surrounding communities. You qualified it by saying that maybe ours isn't quite as complex. But if you forget about the hard dollar amount, we've got about an 8% increase each year on this. How does that look compared to the other folks?
So what I'm seeing come through the listserv is about the same, 8 to 10 to 12%. There's a lot of extra money out there right now from the federal government and the state government. And so counties, cities, villages, we all just have more money, those one-time money. And so those increases are factoring in the fact that these budgets are quite different. There's a lot of different reporting with the budgets right now because of all that one-time funding coming from the state and the feds. And so there is some additional, work that's being done on behalf of the auditors because this money is special in a sense.
Anybody else? Roll call, please.
Roloffs,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes,
you're not,
Yes,
Markey,
Yes.
Nye,
Yes.
motion carried.
Item D, adopt 23-24 fiscal year budget and approval of General Appropriation Act and accepting the L 4029.
So on your desk this morning, Jackie passed out new notebooks for you. So if you could bring back your old notebooks to our office, we will recycle them. But on your desk is the final budget. So there are some tweaks to the budget from the draft budget that you received some time ago. And those are simply for the fact that as we approach the end of the fiscal year, we reevaluated some of the lines to make sure we weren't missing the mark for budgeting for following years. Because, we do plan these numbers so far in advance. Sometimes we miss the mark on our projections. Also with the chart of accounts, a lot of things changed, and we talked about that. A lot of things changed. And with that chart of accounts created some new lines. And so as we continued to work through and just, double, triple, quadruple check the budget, there were some new lines that were added in as well. So then those numbers had to be accounted for in this final budgets. In the past, in the general fund, there was one insurance and bonds line for the general fund. Well, now things are broke out by department. So we had to add a new line to the treasurer's office specifically for insurance and bonds. There is tweaks, but the overall bottom dollar is roughly the same as when we passed out the budget a bit ago. But like I said, there's been tweaks throughout that. There's also, I filled in the blanks when it came to the General Appropriations Act in there and the other blanks that were in some of the exhibits that we just didn't have the numbers at the time. So you'll notice that those documents now are complete and there's not blanks in those documents. So we've held our public hearing. We've had it posted online. It's been at the counter at the clerk's office. There was almost no comment made at the public hearing. So now we're at a point where we can adopt the budget. The deadline is September 30th. So if you're not comfortable adopting the budget today, we can adopt it on the 26th. But for comfort level, for my satisfaction, I like to get things done a little earlier so we're not held against the wall. As part of the budget adoption, as you know, is adopting the General Appropriations Act as well as the L 4029. Some of you probably noticed that the road commission's not on there and you're like, oh no, we forgot the road commission. The road commission is being voted upon in November. So if that is passed at the November election, Brienne will bring forward an amended L 4029 to account for that millage at that time. But what's being adopted in front of you is what's currently on the books. We weren't comfortable putting the road commission on there because we should never assume what the voters are going to decide in November.
Okay, I'm going to start by causing trouble. I would like to pull the prosecutor's budget and the new position for, I don't know exactly what you called it. Was it $200,000 that was
Community
appropriate?
coordinator.
Yeah, I have some issues with that. And the other question I have, in the past, budgets have reflected the wages of all employees. And we don't get that anymore. We only get a handful. And it's not that I'm nosy. It's just that it, to me, always made more sense to be on top of what's going on and see where we're at. I know I can get that information, but I would rather see it in the budget. This is an old one I have. And I've got them all, but and I'll explain why. This is it. And they went on right down through all the positions. I don't know. I guess I'm looking for an explanation as to why we don't do this anymore. Or should we or shouldn't we? I don't know.
It's not required. Just the roster itself is required. The position or the salaries are not required. What I found when you guys, I mean, that you can do that. You're probably the only county I've seen do it. And we can add that back in, but it causes more room for error as people leave their positions, start at a different salary. If we approve a mid-year increase, now that's out of date. It's out of date as soon as you adopt the budget. It's not correct information because things are constantly changing. So rather than put that out there to the community and say, this is what this person's making, and then 2 weeks later, it could be different, and now there's misinformation, I'd rather have that community
Well,
come
it's a
to our.
point in time, like
Sure.
like the G or the general fund or whatever. This is what's here today or when the audit hits. I like that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, maybe most of you don't. That's up to you,
we can add it back in if that's what the
I'm
board
just-
would like.
I'm
It's
just-
just not required.
bringing it forward. Prosecutor, I have had issues with that. And I have tried to reach out to Senator Bumstead's office. They sent me in touch with the MIDC. And I get the runaround as to why they increased the wages, and the reality is the whole system, as far as the court system, should be handled strictly by the state. Now, I can't change that. I can't make it different. What I would like to see, I don't have any problem paying the employees that extra 10 grand. The prosecutor itself, I would rather incrementally increase that. I don't think giving her big bump right off the get-go, that puts her ahead of the whatever you call the guy.
Public defender.
Yeah, the public defender, chief public defender. That would put her ahead of him. Not that that means anything, but he manages, not anymore. He manages 3 down there in Manistee, plus a second in command, and plus 2 up here, I believe, 2 attorneys. So he's managing 5 attorneys. Our prosecutor, and it's not, please don't take this as a direct hit on her. It's a job, is where I'm going with this. She has 3 people. And then forget what the other job is, but I just feel that giving her that big of a bump right off the get-go, especially if there's an opportunity for funding. I'm still working on that. See, I got another call from her today. If there's an opportunity to get some money to help pay for this, I would like to pursue that, and I just don't want to. My feeling is we're opening up a can of worms. Can we sustain it over the long haul? A lot of this stuff, I'm not sure we can anymore, and this is how I feel about it. This is not my money, it's the public's funds. And these kind of things, to me, have to be thought out, and that's what I think about that. And the other one was that the new position and the new 200,000 for that department. Still having qualms about what's going to get done and who's going to do what in that position. And it appears to me we're setting up an office, a new group. So we're expanding government again. If we're going to expand government, some of the underlying things I've heard over the last couple of years is we got some IT problem. Maybe we should be looking at filling that position or looking at that as a department versus some of these other things. I'm not taking anything away from anybody else. I'm just saying my priorities say we need to be looking at this differently. And I guess that's about all I've got to say about it. But anyway, I'd like consideration of it. That's possible.
Gary, can we break down this into 2 different categories?
Sure.
Let's talk first about the prosecutor. When you say you want to pull the budget, your concern is is the salary that's currently allocated or being proposed for the prosecutor. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. And I'm not sure if there isn't a better way, rather than just pulling the whole budget, if there isn't a better way to move this forward and still be able to address your concerns later. I'm not sure what new information you would need to either support how you currently feel or support the proposal. But I will, remind, for the benefit of the public too, any budget increase that was being proposed, we asked the department heads to come in and talk about it. And I heard what you said about the number of employees being supervised. But what I learned from that presentation was that the prosecutor's office measures it by cases managed. And they're managing a far greater number of cases than the public defender's office is. Did I understand that right?
Yeah.
With less staff, yeah.
Yes.
Um,
And I don't mean to interrupt, or what I heard you say, Gary, was 3 personnel. I count 5, including the prosecutor in that office.
You're counting the secretary and,
Well, she's still
Victims
supervising.
advocate.
right. And there's probably some I'm missing from the prosecutor or the chief defender's office, because I'm sure there's a secretary involved there too. So I don't have the exact numbers, but we're talking 2 counties versus 1.
Right.
And it just, to me, that was a hard hit. The next thing I'm gonna see is the sheriff come in here. And I don't blame him either.
He did that last year.
This is how many people I supervise comparatively. Where's my big bump? And then when we go into union negotiations, are we looking at that? Is that, I'm sure we are. It's just that my concern is sustainability, because a lot of this is one-time money. Don't know exactly right now. For the next couple of years, we're probably in good shape. I've also seen this county turn right around and the money go to the south. And then what do? We start laying people off. And it's an elected position. You kind of know where you're at when you walk into it. And so I just, anyway.
Can I add a correction too? So the public defender, they did implement the standard 8 and fund that. So she will not be making more than the public defender. And the Manistee prosecutor, I can tell you, is making over 118,000, and our prosecutor's making 97.
Well, you got her up to 111.
That would be now, yes,
Yeah,
that would be with the
That's
proposed
above
increase.
what the chief public defender makes.
The chief public defender, as of 10/1, with the implementation of standard 8, will be making far more than 101 or
I just
111.
had to know, maybe that was from this last time. I don't know.
Standard 8,
It's
with
just-
the implementation of standard 8, the chief public defender, as well as their staff, have to be paid at certain attorney general levels. And so that's going to put that person, I want to say it was 117 or 120. It's pretty high like that, because it had to be at a certain attorney general wage.
and Gary, what I thought I also heard you say is that you've been working with people in Lansing for the possibility of helping fund that additional amount for the prosecutor?
Well, yeah, and that's my biggest concern. The state mandated this, the state caused this. They want to take over the whole court system. I'm all for that. But they need to help fund these, because I'm still concerned about sustainability. We hand this out, as this never goes away. It always compiles and keeps getting bigger and bigger. And I just don't know what the answer is. It's sorry, it rubs me the wrong way. That's where I'm going with it, I guess.
And your sustainability question, I think, are very reasonable. And once we move past your 2 concerns, I have additional questions for Katie. But Katie, is there a mechanism in place where you can approve the budget, but not approve the prosecutor's salary until additional information comes in?
Yeah, you can approve the budget like that.
Because once we approve the budget, is it at the prosecutor's discretion on how those salary dollars get used, or does that have to be approved separately?
So when you approve the budget as presented, it's going to implement those increases as of 10-1, just like all the staff increases that are budgeted in that budget. So we have agreed that 2% plus $1 for all the other staff. 10-1, that Band-Aid's being ripped off for everybody. So how the budget is presented, it would be effective 10-1, that those increases would be implemented for the various staff persons.
So there's not a way to delay the increase for the prosecutor
You
until
could.
we could.
Yep, you would have to amend the exhibit, which states the prosecutor's salary.
Okay. And if I could address the $200,000 for that additional employee, that recommendation, as you know, Gary, comes from both the Parks Department and from the EDC. Before we pull that or even consider pulling it, Katie, you and I had a conversation yesterday. I expressed concerns about the dollar amount that's being set aside for contingency.
Mhm.
Can you talk about first year setups and how you envision this?
Yeah, so based on the comparables as far as what our department heads and directors are making in Benzie County, as well as that parks feasibility study and what comparables are making around us, you're looking at a community coordinator position making around the $65,000 mark. You add in all of their benefits for family, because it could be a family, so you anticipate high. Now you're up to, 85,000 plus as far as the total compensation. I have expressly said multiple times that hiring one person is inappropriate. You won't do this position justice, that it has to be a person and a half. So now you're looking at another $45,000 for part-time staffing and all the wages and different things that go into that. Then you have, setting up the office, you have training. This is a first-time position. You have a lot of training that comes along with these folks in establishing how this department may run. So you have training costs coming into that. You have equipment costs coming into that. So that's why I rounded up to the 200,000 as a safe number, because right now there's no funding coming in for this. It's us providing the funding. I've put in a letter of intent to the USDA for a grant to help fund a position such as this. So there may be grant funding and we don't use it. Shelley and I have spoke a few times. There's potential of land bank funding helping out with this position and this whole department. So that funding may be coming. But we can't count on those until I know they're coming. So that's where that 200,000 comes in, is based on the position and a half, all the benefits and different things that go along with that, the training, the mileage to those trainings, as well as setting up that department.
I understand that. I'd like to also have a job description of what the Parks Rec Commissioner or person's supposed to accomplish.
All that would be coming. We have it.
And some of these other positions, and that's, to me, it seemed awful high. I see us just continuing to expand, and is it really necessary? I can see the IT person being one of the hugest things that of value for this organization. And I don't have all the answers on that, but it was priorities to me. I would be looking at an in-house IT person of this.
Let's talk about the IT role. We currently contract out to a company that has very deep bench strength that can help us with a variety of issues as it relates to technology. How would that be different than bringing somebody on our payroll that then we've got to sustain that for indefinite?
I'm not gonna go into this forever, but I understand there's some issues with response
Oh,
and being able to cure the problems that we're talking about.
okay.
And if that is an issue, learned a long time ago, if you don't get what you pay for, you move on. So
Mhm.
I'm just saying,
So
we need to look into that.
So this wouldn't be in addition to that third-party arrangement.
No, this might
This would
be
be
instead
in
of.
place of it.
no, there's no way to make it in place of. One person cannot physically implement and house and oversee all of the security and firewalls and all the things that we need for Benzie County, the sheriff, central dispatch, lean. We would still have to contract with a third party. Having an IT person on staff would be helpful for a lot of people. So Benzie County contracted with IT Right. Everybody loved IT Right. IT Right was bought out by VC3, which is a national company. Their customer service, very subpar. Their response, very subpar. We have went rounds and rounds with this company saying we need additional folks coming into our building, helping us out. We need additional service. This just isn't working. I had another meeting just yesterday and I said, we need somebody in this building on this campus more than one day a month. They're giving us one day a month. And I said, it's just not acceptable. So they're trying to get more people to come in here. I have a meeting set up on Monday with another IT company. And then there's another IT company that wants to meet. So we're looking at alternatives, but even hiring an IT person, which would be cool to have somebody in the building, and especially for the health department as well, who needs somebody just kind of on campus, it would be in addition to that third party.
Katie, today, if an employee comes in to their workspace and they turn on their computer and something's not working right, who do they go to?
A lot of times they come to my office or they go to Rebecca. And if we can't help, that they call IT. If it's up the hill, a lot of times they'll go to Corey or Michael Drager for assistance on a lot of things. And if they can help, we call IT.
I'll tell you though, based on my experience, first, I like to keep my costs variable, and by third parties, we always get to do that. It sounds like it's less of a concern about having somebody available and more concern about our current provider. And it sounds like you're addressing that right now.
We're trying to.
Yeah, because even if you had somebody on staff, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but there's going to be a lot of things that they're still going to look for a third party for assistance on. So you can't avoid that contract. And as I said a moment ago, one of the things I like about our contracting it out is that they have a deeper bench. And what I mean by that is if our primary contact isn't available, that's their job to make sure that somebody else is. Where if you have one person running IT and they're out for 12 weeks, they're just out for 12 weeks.
Right. So
again, that's why I like to see these things contracted out. But I want to bring the conversation back to the EDC and Parks Rec, if I could. I don't see how we were going to spend $200,000 next fiscal year. For one thing, if you posted the job on October 1, by the time you brought somebody on board, you're going to be prorating all of those salaries. So I think the 200,000 is rich for us. I think that there's a place though for this position because at a minimum, economic development generates revenue. It's not just an expense. So that's the way I'm looking at this. Those monies haven't specifically been set aside and salaries identified for this position. So potentially, and there is a job descriptions out there already, and the job description has been vetted by the Parks and Department also, Parks and Rec. But that's going to come back to the board and they're going to make a proposal that my money says is less than $200,000 because we aren't just going to arbitrarily say, yeah, 200,000, feel free to spend it the way you want. But if we don't have those monies set aside, we can't even entertain the possibility of what this position could bring to us. But if I could, now this is where I think is going to be helpful. Katie, yesterday, you and I talked about, again, sorry, I took up so much of your time yesterday, but we talked about sustainability of the budget. I have some concerns about one-time monies being used. We're in a great position right now where revenues and expenses are going to balance with each other, which rarely happens. Part of that's been because we didn't anticipate surpluses we're going to have at the end of the year. Can you talk to us about your view on sustainability of this budget going forward?
Sure. So we have quite a much bigger budget than in the past. It's all over Facebook and in the newspaper, but that is all one-time funding. And if you go through the budget, we as staff have been very careful to make sure that one-time funding is going to one-time expenditures. We're not planning things that are going to continue to happen in longevity items with that one-time funding. It's all been set aside for those one-time expenditures, those maintenance items, those sorts of things. So we're not planning on the use of that future funding that's not going to be there. We also have maintained the transfer of general fund dollars to the capital fund in that 300,000. So typically every year you guys transfer somewhere between 200,000 and 300,000 of DTRF surplus from the DTRF general fund to capital. We're still maintaining that transfer. So that extra money isn't sitting in the general fund, and that's what we're using right now. That transfer is still happening. We're still budgeting for that move. So we as staff have gotten very good at estimating our revenues and estimating our expenditures. Is there still room to be had to improve? Absolutely, absolutely. But we're being very diligent in how we're planning and predicting our budgets and what's coming down. There's also increases in revenue sharing that's coming from the state and other different increases with the child care fund. That's a 75% reimbursement versus a 50% reimbursement. And that's something that's put into long sustainability. Secondary road patrol, it's a more constant amount of money coming to Benzie County versus, well, this year it's this much and this year it's this much, because they put that in place at the state level to make that more secure and in longevity. So the sustainability, is it sustainable forever? Probably not. We're going to have to address Headley at some point because we cannot continue to go backwards. We simply cannot. We reap the benefit of this year of not rolling back. That's huge. Next year, we're predicting potentially we won't roll back again. Again, that's huge. Eventually, we're going to have to address Headley, but for the foreseeable future, I don't see any issues because we're not utilizing that one-time funding to implement things that are going to take more money in a few years. We're using that one-time funding appropriately for those one-time expenditures, and we're working with money that we know is constant.
Just one last thought. As a taxpayer in Headley, when I see you do this stuff, see you expanding government and spending more money, and that when you ask for more money down the road later, it's hard to explain to the public that this was a one-time deal, but because we gave huge increases to one department and we started another department, kind of reminds me of COVID. Is everybody buying the program? So I just throw that out there.
So you go back to the one-time money again. The one-time money is completely separate. We're not considering that in these other things. Yes, we're expanding government, but we're expanding government based on the need we're understanding from the community. We're hearing from the community, our volunteers. We've done a feasibility study. We're hearing the need for introducing someone who's really managing our parks and managing our economic development. And when you manage those things and carry them out to the best of our ability, now we're growing Benzie County. We're flourishing. We're increasing our tax base. We're increasing our tourist traffic to our parks at a reasonable rate. And so that then is increased revenue for the community. So, you can't really have one without the other.
Are you telling me that the Parks and Rec directors are gonna bring in funds to the community, or just summer people who are gonna have more of them here working in our business or buying into our businesses? You have a few folks that are totally against expanding Benzie County and
I know.
so anyway. My biggest concern, and it'll always be taxpayers.
To chime in, the IT need, I believe it's there. I think it's an important issue. I think we need to look at shared solutions for that. I wouldn't mind that being a part of the $200,000 earmark. I'm not sure. I'm going to shift gears over to the community development person. I've been on board with that concept since it started being discussed. We are responsible for county-owned land. We have a Parks and Rec that we rely heavily on. Our whole county relies heavily on volunteerism. And one of the things that I hear is to be good stewards of that, we have to invest in it a little bit. And that's providing services to folks who come here to know what we have to offer, how we take care of it. I do think that concept of that position needs to be developed more. I keep hearing EDC and Parks and Rec. I don't hear any mention of land bank, and that's an important component to me. Land bank is slowly house by house helping with our housing issue. They're an excellent tool and forward motion in that area, and they need community development assistance as well, but they've been kind of dropped off of the conversation. So I just want to make sure that the concept includes them. I'm not sure if we should start with 1.5 people. I'm kind of leaning towards you start with a person so they can get their sea legs and figure out what the needs are in that position, how well it's received and what they accomplish. And then once a certain period of time passes, if they do need that assistance, you go in that direction. I don't know if we from the get-go have 2 people to try and accomplish this. As far as the prosecutor's wage, our hand was forced with this I agree with you, Gary. We didn't ask for this to happen. The state mandated this salary for our probate or for our public defender. What resonated with me when we heard from the prosecutor's office was retention. A lot of communities are responding to that, and if we don't, we put ourselves in jeopardy of losing the staff we have to better offers, people who did respond to this. They are professionals who earn a wage that we've been told now the bar is rising. And if we don't rise to that level, we have to respond. Should it be subsidized? Should the state take it over? I think so. But until that happens, I think we have to respond to what the state has done. I can't see another way.
We have information from all these other counties that these all have increased.
So I know that Manistee is giving a 5% increase to staff across the board this year. That's their proposed increase to their staff is 5%. I do have the comparables for the prosecutors and assistant prosecutors that compare to Benzie County as established by our legal counsel. We're still not at the top, even with this increase.
No, but Manistee didn't give they were higher to begin with.
Yeah, their prosecutor
they didn't
was
get anything
almost
at the 5%.
25,000 more than our prosecutor.
Right. But there's not apples to apples either, so.
They are considered a comparable though.
I just
Even
don't
for-
want to give up opportunities for possible other funding. And I agree, I'm more than willing to give the two in the inner office. I wish I wouldn't say this, in the prosecutor's office, because it's not anything but job. I'm more than willing to give them that bump. I would just as soon incrementally increase the prosecutor. It's like $800 a month, $850 a month increase in wages. That'd be pretty good. Just saying. Like, speak.
Please come to the microphone, Shelley.
Thanks. While she's coming, I will point out, at one of the, MAC committees I'm on, some of the prosecutors are talking about staffing issues where they're like down 20, 30 prosecutors. So the fact that we're fully staffed is awesome. And this is going to be a problem going forward if we don't make sure that they're taken care of.
You could use that same analogy on the sheriff's department if you want to get right down.
Actually, we're within the top 2 of our comparables for that department.
Staffing issues out there, yeah.
So in terms of the community coordinator position, it doesn't seem so much like it's an expansion of government as it's taking off the responsibilities from volunteers. We have had volunteers running a land bank authority because I don't get paid to do that. I am the staff person for that. We have nobody except an economic development committee that's providing brownfield assistance, and that rolls back to the county administrator. The Parks and Rec has been all volunteer, and you can only squeeze so much blood out of the turnip before you're done. So a lot of the things that we're trying to achieve with the county coordinator, the community coordinator, is already in place. We're not expanding government. We're already doing it. It's just we're doing it piecemeal and we're not doing it full justice. And so by supporting this, then all those things come into play that Art described, the increase in economic development in our communities. It's happening, but it's happening kind of willy-nilly, and it's not guided by our staff because we don't have staff. So this is a great opportunity for us to do better on all those fronts. And I think the cost will come back to us tenfold. Increase land bank activity, increase brownfield activity, increase Parks and Rec activity, increased economic development. Those are all things that we have really never supported. They're just happening. I think we can do better. And I think this position would help us do better. My 2 cents. The other thing, Gary, that you talked about was wanting itemization of salaries in the general fund. That adds to hours and hours of adjustments and entries in our general fund. We already keep track of it in payroll. If you ever want that information, payroll can provide it, but
I
it
knew
doesn't
I
have
could
to
get
be
it,
in the
yeah.
general fund.
But
And when we took it out of the general fund, we lost 400 line items. I loved that.
Mm.
It just makes it a clearer picture, and it helps with the whole process. And then if you want detail, you can tunnel into payroll for all the details.
I knew I could get it.
Mhm.
That's not my concern. It was in there in the past.
Yeah.
And it was easier for me to have it in here. To look, I know it's just a snapshot.
It's just
at
more
that point
difficult
in
for
time,
everybody else to
Right.
manage that. And it
But
was
you
never
should be able to
accurate.
print it
That's-
off of your payroll.
It was never.
I mean,
accurate.
you're always chasing it because somebody took a lateral move, somebody left, somebody started. So the old salary was higher than the person filling the position, and
But it also gives the public an idea what the positions pay.
it's public information.
I know, and they'd have
And
to
they
come in
can-
here and
they
get
can
it, but
ask it.
This is easy.
Well, it's also in the
Anyway.
collective bargaining agreements, which are now online. Anybody can look at any of our collective bargaining agreements and see the wage tables. So they know the individual salaries for those different departments and different.
I'm just
spots.
old school and I like it that way, so.
I will put it back in if
You-
the board
you
would
don't-
like me
no.
to.
I was accustomed to it and I did ask for it and I was given it by the next day. And so I just wanted to peruse it, make sure that everything looked in line. It spent a few minutes on it, so it was very easy to get. And, but I was used to seeing it in the budget and that's why I asked for it.
Suppose I can do that, but save them some time on this, but
I think the question needs to be asked is, does it make us less transparent? And is that information available to the public if they want it? I'm hearing that it is.
Absolutely.
So the question is, does it make us less transparent because it's not as easily available?
The general ledger is equally available as payroll. I mean, we don't publish the general ledger. You have to come and ask for it. So if you want details regarding payroll, go ask for it.
And as you said, that's a snapshot in time as we approve it anyway.
It always is.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're asking for a report, it is a snapshot.
So I know we're jumping around here, but keeping these, it's the same two subjects. I just want to stress something that Shelley's pointed out. With the EDC, in the 25 years that I've been involved with the EDC, we've actually had 3 different people try to manage it for us. At no time did we really have control or have a dedicated support. So we've really never moved forward. If we don't help ourselves, we can't ask for help from anybody else, including grants, because I see this person accessing grant money for us too. Keeping in mind that the governor has carved out a piece of the budget for rural economic development. And we need to be ready to access that. If we're not helping ourselves, the state isn't going to fund us. It's just that simple. And I think it's really important to stress that we've got great volunteers in this community, but I think we ask too much of them. You know, when I leave an EDC meeting, Rhonda sits there too, there's a lot of good information that comes out and a lot of great ideas, and nothing can happen until the next meeting because there's nobody waking up every day thinking about it. And that's what I'm looking for. And we're talking about a 3-year commitment. And I think that we can measure it. I think we can measure in the first year, expect nothing, quite frankly. But in the second and third year, I think you'll be able to see some tangible results. And if we come back in the third year and we have it, then we can revisit it. But you've got to make that investment kind of on a leap of faith, because we're not always going to have a guy like Ed out there. On the EDC, we don't have anybody like Ed,
Well, and
because
if,
he lives and breathes it.
and if the 200,000 is what's scary, I mean, bring it down. I mean, like,
You
you
told
know,
me you probably would spend it anyway.
no.
we're gonna get another bite at that apple. I'm sorry, go ahead. But Gary, I am confident that the way that we're approving this, they aren't gonna be able to spend, administration is not gonna be able to spend any money on these positions without us approving it. So if they had put 200,000 aside, but the real need is only 120, well, that's all I'm pretty sure that we're gonna be willing to approve. I certainly am not gonna ask to spend more money than we need.
So with a carve out in the budget for an earmarked contingency for this position, that doesn't mean that you have to approve a budget totaling the earmark. You can set it there and say, okay, you know, we didn't find anybody till December, so there's 2 months that we're not gonna pay for, and there's, you know, we changed our mind on this, or we adjusted the description on that, or because we haven't really completed the process yet. We're merely putting an earmark in the budget so that we are placekeeping for this position once we get all of our ducks in a row. So just because it says we're earmarking 200,000 doesn't mean that we have to approve a budget of 200,000 when we do approve that budget, and it'll come before you with the description change and all of that.
Mhm.
It kind of a testimony to the value of having someone working this is look at the project manager that we hired for broadband expansion. Most of the public doesn't understand how much money that individual has helped us attract. Without that individual, we having hired them, we wouldn't see the $10+ million that we've been able to use in the private sector to expand. I think that in itself is a testimony on why we need to explore this.
Well, even for this grant that we have created a letter of intent to help support this position. It's taking additional time from me. It's taking additional time from Katie to even create that grant and write the request and the letter of intent and all of those things. You know, we've always added those small jobs onto somebody else. And at some point, if we have this person, that person has that responsibility. And then that leaves the county treasurer to do county treasurer things. It leaves the administrator to do administrative things. It's better. In my humble.
Thank you for clearing some of this up for me. I'm still an old hardhead.
So there's about $500,000 into contingency. This is earmarking up to 200,000 for this endeavor. But all final transactions have to come before this board before anything's put in stone. This is just us earmarking it, just like I want to earmark $100,000 for wage evaluations. I mean, you're not pulling the Band-Aid, you're like peeling the Band-Aid.
The only one that
That
I would
makes
have
sense.
problems with is with it budgeted in the prosecutors. The only way we could do that is, you said, to
So you would have to
incrementally.
adopt the budget as presented with the amendment to the appendix, which outlines the elected official salaries. You would have to deduct that 10,000 from that elected official salary, if that's what you are so inclined to do.
I don't want to deduct the whole thing, but
No, you deduct the $10,000 or whatever you want to do. So on the appendix, I think it's A or B. It has the elected official salaries. Not that one.
that's all.
That's an old budget.
You don't want to do 21?
Sure.
That'd be appendix A. So appendix A outlines the elected official salary. So it's this board, as well as the attorney, the sheriff, the clerk, all of those folks. And so what is on appendix A includes that $10,000 increase for the prosecuting attorney as requested. So if you didn't want it in there, you would have to adopt the budget with the amendment to appendix A, which establishes that salary.
Oh, it's way in the back. I'm looking in the wrong place.
Appendixes are in the back. Yes,
What color you got?
it's V.
Okay. Just looked at yours.
Yeah, because yours is draft.
Katie, different question for you.
Yes.
Under the General Appropriations Act, the millages that you have out there, with respect to the medical care centers debt, does that reflect what we negotiated with them? Okay.
So the medical care bond, as well as the school and youth resource officers, this reflects a lower levy than what is allowed. And that is based on the need as well as the agreement with the Maples. So the one is based on the agreement with the Maples, the other one's based on the need. We lowered that levy. So one thing I do want to point out to the community is that if you compare last year's general appropriations with this year's, we're levying a bit less from the community because we're only asking for what we truly need.
Glad you pointed that out. So I guess in order to test the waters to see where we're at, and Gary, I'm not ignoring what your needs are, but I'm going to make the motion and let's just see where it falls.
Okay.
Okay. So Janat moves that the Board of Commissioners adopts the 23-24 General Appropriation Act and the 23-24 fiscal year budget, including recommendations made in September 6, 23 memorandum from the county administrator authorizing the chair to sign in General Appropriations Act L 4029.
Markey will support.
Motion and support. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Sauer,
No.
Cunningham,
Yes.
you're not,
Yes.
Markey,
Yes.
Nye,
Yes.
Roloff.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item E. Or a short break. Short break.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, we'll be back in about 5 minutes.
You're unmuted.
We're back in session. Move to item E, letters of understanding, collective bargaining agreement reopener.
So as you're all aware, within the collective bargaining agreements, within that final year of the agreement is a reopener clause. That reopener allows the union or the county to come to the table and ask for one item to reopen to negotiate in that final year of the contract. This year is the reopener. We did go to the table for the deputies, as you recall, and what we agreed upon for the deputies, we recommended and just adopted in the budget to give that same increase to everyone else. The other union groups, I expressed that to them that was the intent, and they forewent the reopener as long as that was adopted. It was now adopted, so the appropriate motion is for you to approve letters of understanding with those other groups. So then it closes that gap. So there's nobody comes back and says, well, we didn't get to do the reopener. This would close that gap. That was what was agreed upon.
Okay, I would make an motion coming in.
Yep.
That the Board of Commissioners authorizes a letters of support agreement with the Command Officers Association of Michigan, Corrections Command Unit, Road Command Unit, the Police Officers Associations of Michigan, Corrections Unit, Emergency Communications Specialist Unit, and the Emergency Medical Services Unit, which affirms a wage increase for all members beginning October 1, 2023, and authorizes the chair to sign.
I support.
Thank you.
So a motion and support. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Knapp,
Yes.
Markey,
Yes.
Nye. Yes. Roloffs.
Yes.
Sowers,
Yes.
motion carried.
Item F. Consider adopting a resolution establishing Benzie County as a PACE district.
So what came before you is representatives from PACE to talk about this program and what it means for Benzie County. The EDC also heard about this program and did recommend it forward to Benzie County. So this in front of you is a resolution to establish Benzie County as a district. It establishes the entire county as a district. This isn't a carte blanche approval to any developer that comes forward, because as a reminder, it's commercial property. This simply establishes Benzie County as a district so that then those individuals have this source of funding as an option as they develop. The approval of those individual agreements still come before the county for approval. So you will have another bite at every individual applicant that wants to be part of this program to approve at a future date. This does involve a little bit of county time, specifically for your approval standards, as well as potentially some treasurer time. But as we heard from the gentleman who came and spoke during the public hearing, is that it's very minimal time that Benzie County would actually have to endure to carry out any individual applications. We could establish this district and have no applications even come forward for 5 years. Because it's a bit limited in the sense that it's commercial properties only. So we may forget about PACE before an application comes before us. Grand Traverse County, for instance, has had it in place for a little while now, and they only have 5 total applications, and it's been years. So it's very infrequent, but it at least gives that tool to commercial developers as an option as they consider developing in Benzie County.
Katie, I thought that residential's properties also qualified.
No, it's commercial development only. That was my understanding from the beginning.
I move that the Board of Commissioner adopts Resolution 2312, thank you, to establish a property assessed clean energy program.
Markey will support.
Motion and support. Is there further discussion? Roll call, please.
Cunningham,
Yes.
Knapp,
Yes.
Markey,
Yes.
Nye. Yes. Roloffs,
Yes.
Sauer,
No.
motion carried.
Feisty today.
Item G, consider authorizing Michigan Department of Natural Resources Development Grant Application, $300,000 for Railroad Point.
Ed Hoogdorp is here to answer any questions about this. This came through our portal, our grant portal through the state of Michigan as needing to be approved for this $300,000.
Yeah, I think that the agenda item refers to this as the application. This is actually an agreement.
Yes.
This grant has been applied for, approved by the Natural Resources Trust Fund, appropriated by the legislature and signed by the governor. $300,000 in state funds, plus $300,000, which has been committed by the Grand Traverse Regional Land Conservancy, and they assure me that that's already been raised or committed to them. You probably recall that the Board of Commissioners also agreed to commit $80,000 to this project. We have not included that $80,000 in the grant thing because part of the reason that you did this was to make sure that certain things can be included, and we don't, including looking at additional parking. And we wanted to make sure that we don't get stuck where they say, no, you can't pay for that for the grant. So we've got that extra money to ensure that the three things that you appropriated that for, to assure that we had access to get in the water, not just on the water, and that we have a permanent bathroom facility, and that we at least consider the possibility of creating additional parking to the 20 sites that are in there. So where we stand, what we're asking you to do today is really the starting line for a 2-year project. We have a request for proposals for the final design ready to go out. Our goal would be that we'd be wrapping up this project just about this time next year. We actually have a 2-year window that we can do it in, which is extendable. But it's a fairly simple project in some ways because it's just excavation and building. There's no plumbing, no electrical, no sewer, that sort of thing. So we're just, I can answer any questions, but we're just requesting that you authorize the administrator and the chairman to execute this agreement.
I'll make the motion that the Board of Commissioners accepts the $300,000 grant award from the State of Michigan Department of Natural Resources Trust Fund for Rural Point Water Access, and authorizes the chair to sign the development project agreement.
9 seconds.
Motion and support. Is there further discussion?
Just one question if I could.
Sure.
So, and the 50% match is coming from the Conservancy, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do we need to comment on that in the motion so that it's understood that the county's not on the hook for that, but that the Conservancy is doing it?
Well, it's within the memo that it's coming from the Conservancy. It's just not part of the motion, but it is part of the memo. So if for additional comfort, we can add to the memo as outlined.
Just let me ask the question differently then. And I probably would never happen, but if the Conservancy failed to come through with the money, would the county be on the hook for it?
Yes.
Thought so. Okay.
Well, if we, at some point, if we don't take, if we did the project, yeah, you could always, the money goes back to the state if we don't do it, I think, but. I
would like to amend the motion.
Good.
Add the match money will be handled by the Conservancy and Traverse and Conservancy for this project.
Fine with my motion.
Fine with your motion.
We'll vote on the amendment.
Well,
Well, if-
we had a motion on the floor.
yeah, you guys
We have
can
to either
friendly amend.
retract the motion and make a new one.
You can friendly amend the motion.
Okay.
So the first and second, if they agree to amend the motion, since it hasn't been voted on, it's a friendly amendment and you can vote on the motion on the
So
floor
I was
now.
agreeing to it.
Good.
Robert's rules of paid off again. Look at that.
So there's a motion and support and an amendment, and
10 years of clerk in meetings.
we'll roll call that as well.
You're not?
Yes.
Markey,
Yes.
Knight,
Yes.
Roloffs,
Yes.
Sauer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
motion carried.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Ed.
He's speaking on the next item too.
Oh, stay there, Ed. Consider approving a change order for Point Betsy Shoreline Protection Project.
So this This, you've seen several of these. This is largely due to the fact that we rejected the loan bid that we had for this work and have gone back not to square one, but say to square 55 to restart this project. This is a change order for $48,500. It's been approved by the Friends of Point Betsy, who of course are the ultimate payers of this. And it's primarily due to added bidding assistance from the engineering company and some permitting support costs. And I will acknowledge that this is probably not the last one because we're going into some other issues with this. Current status of the project is that the permit applications have been filed. Some comments came back from the Eagle, what's called the Special Exceptions Board, because this is a special kind of a project. And they have asked us to do certain things that the State Historical Preservation Office has told us we couldn't do. And so we have to respond in ways. The expectation is that nothing will change about the project, but we have to explain to one agency why the stones are placed where they are so that they can accept it without fighting with the other agency. So a lot of this additional cost is really having our marine engineers deal with that back and forth between the state agencies. Some of it is also due to just what goes on with the project. There's also in this change order, one thing that's been added, which would have been probably part of the construction project or contract otherwise, which is to do what we call a precondition inspection of the lighthouse and the fog building and all that before any construction takes place, so that all that is documented, so that if for example, there's damage to the lighthouse by pile driving, we know that that's been done and we know who's responsible. That's also included in this change order, which probably otherwise would have come up at some later date as something that clearly had to be done. But that's where we are. I can answer any questions if you have any, and we're still trying to move ahead with the project.
And I do have two questions,
Yeah.
and they are really related to this. First, the 5.2 million that the state provided a year or so ago, has that already been funded?
It's committed. I believe that part of it has been received by the Friends, but I actually don't know the answer to that. It's the one thing I do know about that is we're supposed to spend that by the end of 2025.
Okay, that was another one of the questions. So,
Mm.
and right now we're on track to be able to do this work by then, right?
Yes.
Okay, and again, I believe it's relevant to this decision. The subcommittee that's following the construction of all of this, these folks have been on board for a while. Is that committee still in place?
Yes, that is.
I'm talking about, like Dick's on it and Chuck's on it.
That's Chuck Clark, Dick Taylor, myself, and Bill Hurd.
Okay, because I think the continuity of that leadership group is important to see this through. Otherwise, you're going to spend even more money than you think.
So you're telling me I can't quit?
In so many
Indentured.
words.
I love volunteers.
Fair enough, yeah.
All right, I move that the Board of Commissioners approves change order number 4 to the Point Betsy Shoreline Protect Project Agreement with Bar Engineering in the amount of $48,500, and that the board chair be authorized to sign, and that the related budget amendment in the amount of $48,500 for the project to allow for reimbursement revenues from the Friends of Point Betsy and payment of invoices by the county be approved.
Janot supports.
Thank you.
Motion and support. Is there further discussion? Roll call, please.
Markey,
Yes.
Nye, Yes. Roloffs.
Yes.
Sauer,
Yes.
Cunningham,
Yes.
you're not,
Yes.
motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you,
by
Ed.
the way, thank you for the really helpful discussion of the community development, Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
Good.
I enjoyed listening to it. My stomach
Thanks, Ed.
isn't always-
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, let's see,
All right, we'll move on to commissioner reports.
be us.
Yesterday I attended Benzie County Veterans Affairs. Some of you may have noticed yesterday that I brought the new Veterans Affairs trailer that was purchased recently with some grant money. And then locally Epic Center Graphics has put a wrap on it for Benzie County Veterans Affairs and some other stuff about some of the resources that the Veterans Affairs Office offers. The guys that did a great job and Karen as well of putting that whole thing together. So we'll have that at whatever events come in front of us. Veterans Day is coming next, so it'll be down at the memorial. And it'll house, we have a fairly large tent, some other things for picnic kind of stuff. There's not going to be a grill in there, I don't believe, but there are some other artifacts that we'll be taking with us. Agenda review last week. It might not sound like much, but it's always good to go over the agenda before it comes in front of this board, and Rhonda and I take part in that. So, as well as the county administrator and some other folks. So, I talked about this one quite a bit, which was the Benzie Central Frankfurt football game was last Friday night. I think we had approximately 200 plus or minus veterans, first responders, anybody in that service entity. It was a privilege to walk with or next to Sheriff Rosa and his two sons. They led the Husky line, the line that was on the Husky side. And one of the other school resource officers, Officer McKinley, led the Panther line. So it was a pleasure. I acted as the master of ceremonies. It was pretty good. We missed having a Coast Guard flyover. They had some other activity, and he told me that when I was filled out the application, he said, we will try, but there's some other activities going on locally that we don't know if we can take care of both of you at the same time. So we weren't able to get flyover, but we did have the post 221 honor guard, which always does a great job. I can't remember the young girl that sang the national anthem. She was a classmate of Paul Miller. I do remember that. And Paul's the young man, most recent young man that was killed in action in Afghanistan. His family's from the Lake Ann area. His dad was there with a commemorative car that him and his son started on while Paul was still stationed in the States. And after he went to Afghanistan and got killed, Dad put the car in the back corner of the garage, covered it up, and didn't even mess with it until a few years ago. He decided that it was up to him to get it finished and get it out and about. So we've been fortunate to have the car at a couple of our most recent events, Memorial Day, and we had it up there right in front of the snack bar at the football game. For any of you that weren't there, Homestead Hills, their parking lot was full, as well as the access drive out to Homestead Road. And then on Homestead Road, both sides of the road from Homestead Hills to the far entrance of the high school, plus both lots in the high school, the teachers parking lot and the student parking lot, all were full. It was a great day. Both sides of the stands were full, plus it was 3 deep all the way around the half of the track. So it was great to be a part of it. And I'm appreciative. Rhonda and her husband showed up on behalf of the board. So hopefully this will keep continuing and we move on to to keep supporting Bezzy Central and Frankfurt high schools. So thank you, Rhonda. Thanks to you and Ken for being there, and we shall go forward. Art, any comments you want to make?
I do. Strap in.
Keep it brief.
Listen, anything's gonna be more brief than yours, so.
Well,
I served as directed by the board from the last meeting. Don't miss meetings, right? I met with the interview committee. You'll talk more about that today with respect to the appointment or reappointment to the Maples Board.
oh, I did that one too. Thanks, Art.
Platte Township, I met with the supervisor. We discussed the upcoming Ironman competition. We talked about election day challenges, community concerns regarding the management of the zoning and planning among their joint planning committee. And at the community's request, they have now installed a sound system for their meeting hall. Lake Township is looking for an enforcement officer for their zoning. They are discussing and have now approved a short-term rental ordinance. The planning committee will hold a meeting to get public input on the impact that local zoning has on lakes and rivers. And the canoe and kayak landing at Plant River Point is scheduled to be rebuilt for the 24 tourism season. Elmira Township, the fire department has applied for a $20,000 grant from state of Michigan to purchase additional equipment. The Parks and Recreation Committee has proposed a dog park, discussed concerns regarding early voting, which seems to be a theme with the number of clerks that I talked to. Tammy, I'm sure you have some thoughts on that. And it's been decided in Elmira Township to use the ARPA funds for infrastructure needs. At the request of a couple of board members from the Transportation Authority, Commissioner Worsecki and I met with those members to talk about their 23 and 24 budget. And last piece that I want to stress is there was some discussion today about the commission's role and EDC's role on internet and housing. The EDC has been working with this nearly on the majority of their agendas each month for internet broadband, probably for going on 4 years now, I'm going to guess. For those in the community that are frustrated that it takes a long time, I identify with that concern, but know that we're moving along as quickly as we're able to without owning it. And the objective was important for us not to have the county owning an internet service that we couldn't sustain. So we have to work only as quickly as the private sector can. The private sector can only work as quickly as capital is available, as well as human resources are available to them. There's been a lot of work done throughout the county. As most of you know, we're using multiple providers to get this work done. Some we're able to negotiate with to the greater benefit of the community than others, but it's still rolling out and it's happening. Our objective was accessibility, reliability, and affordability, and we think that we're still meeting those parameters. With respect to housing, I've seen communities that own housing. I don't believe that Benzie County should own any housing, but I like the approach that we've been using, that we're supporting them financially, as well as supporting them with letters and resolutions to be able to attract money. So let there be no doubt, and I'm sorry that these folks aren't in the room anymore, but let there be no doubt that this is high priority for this commission. And even though it's not talked about at every meeting, there is something happening on a regular basis, whether it be through the land bank or the brownfield or the private sector. And hopefully at the end of the year, what we can do for you is we can recap both the broadband and housing to let you know where the inventory stands today versus where it was when we started out in the project. I'll entertain questions.
Just one. Isn't Josh Mills the zoning administrator for Lake?
Yes, he is.
But they need a code enforcement officer. That's what they're looking.
They are. And I believe that
They're not the
there's,
only ones, but
they're not the only ones looking for an
Right.
enforcement officer, right? You can write all the ordinances you want. If you don't enforce them, they don't apply. Right.
Any other questions? Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes, went to the airport authority, citizen from Beulah, Dave Beaton is his name, spoke about community radio. And some of us may remember WBNZ when we used to have a local station. And they are starting to have this type of service in Benzie County. And he described it as eyewitness for the community. So he's going to be going around and talking, and he's run this type of station down in Florida and has a success rate. So I thought that was great. That information was shared at the airport authority. I communicated with Representatives Roth, Kofia, and Skaggs about the septic bill. And I know it's of concern as far as cost and everything goes on that and personnel. I would highly recommend that if you have it available to look at the Michigan 83 podcast by Representative Skaggs. It answers a lot of those questions and it's pretty succinct. So I totally recommend watching that if you have it available. I encouraged at the Lake Township meeting, both Commissioner Janot and I go to that the public reach out, and that's a very well-attended township meeting, that they contact any of the commissioners, but Commissioner Janot and I about the septic, since that seems to be a lot of questions that I'm entertaining at this point in time. Yesterday, this is why my minutes are in late, because I wanted to include the MAC Environmental Regulatory Committee that I sit on for the county. And we had a representative, Commissioner Candace Miller from Macomb County, who her job is drain commissioner. Interesting, isn't that? Not many hats, that is her job, but I understand it's a big. And she recommended that underground infrastructure be included in master plans. And I had never heard that stated before, but it made sense to me to think broadly about that sort of thing. And then, sorry about the Senator Bumstead and several Democrats are working together to get the reimbursement for the disabled veterans property tax given back to the veterans. So they're working on that, and MAC is supporting to not preempt county for solar and wind. They're supporting counties to establish their own zoning. And these were all legislative updates from Madeline Fata, who is with the MAC committee. And unless there's any questions. Thank you.
We will move on to Commissioner now.
Oh, one more thing. I
Whoa.
forgot to say this. Oh, Art, okay. Also, I'm so pleased about this. Chief Cedarholm has gotten it approved to have a cadet program for firefighters. And he has 2 to 3 students that are interested in this program. He is all qualified, and you were sharing with me during the meeting that he did some of the training for you during your fire training. So he's ready to go. He's such a huge asset for this county and seeking out grants and the drone equipment for firefighters and things like this. And now this cadet program. And I almost forgot to mention it. I'm done now, Bob. Thank you.
All right. Rhonda.
Oh, let me see. I attended the Benzie Leelanau District Health Department meeting. Commissioner Sauer reported on that on his written report, but the health officer, Dan Thorell, discussed a handout from the Office of the Governor, which updated the changes in emergency powers to protect the public health. Couple very significant changes in this pamphlet. The bids received, there were 3 of them for the Leelanau County Space Needs renovation. They were much more reasonable than the original bid they received, and the Health Department intends to cover half the cost of that renovation. And then the Workforce Development Survey was completed and reviewed. I also attended the Benzie County and Manistee County Public Defender Committee meeting. That discussion was regarding our Chief Public Defender, Jared Henry's resignation and consideration of an interim Chief Public Defender. Jared Henry was appointed as a probate judge by the governor and will also be an 85th Circuit judge, and I'm sure he will do a great job in those roles. The committee approved the recommendation of Jane Johnson as interim. I attended the land bank meeting. The inventory was reviewed. Our treasurer shared that there was a judge that granted quiet title to a trailer in Thompsonville that was owned by the land bank. This was essentially a precedent-setting determination that the trailer was affixed to the property. There were certain criteria that the judge could ascertain, and this ruling allowed the land bank to move forward with demolition. And that's huge for across the state. The trailer is essentially our personal property because it has a tag on the inside and a title to it, and neither of those could be found. So without this ruling, you could really not do anything with it. So it was significant. The MALB Leadership Summit, it was reported, will be September 20th through 22nd in Flint. Our treasurer will be attending, and this marks the 20th anniversary of land banking in Michigan. The blight elimination grant rounds were updated, and the Lions Club in Frankfurt will be coming down as soon as Consumer Energy disconnects their lines. Then finally, last night I attended the Village of Benzonia. There was consideration of the Benzie County Road Commission contract. It was a 5-year contract. The board requested more information regarding the rates they would be charged should the road commission services be needed. They approved a proposal from Fleece and Vandenbrink for a capital improvement plan and also discussed an application for an RRC grant to offset that cost up to $10,000. They discussed a USDA recommendation to pay down a loan they hold at 4.5% interest, which led into a discussion about moving the village funds to banks paying higher interest rates. The village also reported they were made aware that Figura Law Office is closing. They will be merging with Micah Myers, and an RFP will be posted for village attorney representation. Beyond that, I attended the Homestead Hills ribbon cutting ceremony and the Salute to Veterans event at the Benzie Frankfurt football game, and that was an honor. All I have.
Questions for Enda?
Just an update. Read the Leelanau paper, last board meeting that our commissioners did, referring to our expansion.
Okay.
Which paper?
Leelanau paper.
Wasn't supported.
It's being pushed off for a while.
Rhonda, question for you with respect to Dick's retirement. I've sat in a couple of meetings now where other communities are being affected. Did the village talk about any specific law firms that they're looking at, or they just going to post an RFP and?
Yeah, the village's needs are specific to their planning commission and blight remediation. And so the idea was they were going to draft an RFP, which was very succinct and, kind of outline the needs that they had and see if there was a good fit, including Micah Myers, where I believe Tim Figura is going.
He is. And I'm just wondering if there would be any advantage to them collaborating together, these groups, to try to get a better contract. That's all.
Sure.
Something to think, but we can talk about it offline. And
Okay.
Anybody
that's all
else?
I've got.
Tim?
I attended the Northern Michigan Regional Entity Substance Use Disorder Oversight Committee yesterday. We reviewed 2 requests for the PA2 funding. Both were from Emmett County. Both were approved. One of them, they do have a commitment to have to come back in 6 months and give us a status update for us to continue the funding for that grant. As of right now, Benson County's our PA2 projected fiscal year 23 ending balance is $211,000. $211,000 approximately. Attended the Village of Honor Council meeting. They amended their parking ordinance from no parking on any street in the wintertime from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. to make it year round. Also, they're waiting from the USDA for their last payment on their sewer treatment plant loan that they had. They only have one payment left. They're pretty excited about it. That's all I have.
Questions for Tim? All right, Gary.
I was gonna ask Tim, I see they're finally working on that project at the old gas station there.
Yeah, they got pushed back again. So yeah, they talked about that at the meeting last night. Evidently they have some groundwater they have to pump out. And one of the employees for the village lives next door, said that they can pump it onto his property. But they have to get a permit to do that.
Instead of hauling it away or whatever they're required to do. I don't know.
But that should pause it just briefly again, but you can see that there is movement. They actually started doing the excavating. They'd like to get the foundation and things started so they can actually work. Get things moving, but.
Yeah, I was hopeful. It's been a long time. All right, mine. I just wanted to mention, I went to the swearing in ceremony and Judge Bruner swore. Yes, it was, yes, we were in court. How do you pronounce it?
Runner.
Runner. And Jared had worked for him for years, so it was pretty neat. The courtroom was packed.
Oh.
They had an overflow room with a camera, so the rest of them could watch. I didn't know he had that big a family, but anyway, it was pretty exciting and pretty impressive. So best of luck to Jared. You can read everything else. I went to the MAC meeting for the workers' comp meeting. The dividend this year that they're trying to split up is 3.9 million, which is 0.1 million more than last year, 100,000. I don't know what it is. So we will be comparable to last year. And that's always good news. Went to the Village of Alberta last night. The clerk has resigned as of October 1st. And that's why I asked Katie about charter and general law villages. And they tried to pass a resolution to allow them to hire somebody outside the village. So I'm a little confused if that's going to be legit. They didn't look for a legal opinion, so they are what they are. I also wanted to give credit to the Benzie Manistee Republican Party. They shared with the vets 1,000 pounds of beef and 200 pounds of pork from which they bought at the Manistee County Fair. So political differences aside, it's a great thing to help these folks out. And hopefully we got some pictures on the website. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. I got something else scribbled out here. Oh, the fire department at this is back to the village of Thompsonville, received a grant for turnout gear or whatever. They received it on September 8th and they have to have it spent by September 30th. So I am not sure. Hopefully they'll be able to get what they want.
September 30th, 2025.
It's this year.
That's
You
fast.
can't even
got-
get turnout gear in
And they had,
less than
I know,
16 weeks.
can you pay it ahead? That's what I'm wondering,
Mhm.
because you gotta have a receipt.
Oh, I'm sure that any, say, yeah, we'll take your money now.
So, it's just, I hope they get what they want. It just seemed like that they had to have the request in back in July. No concern, but anyway, just wanted to bring that forward. That's all I've got.
Questions for Gary?
Gary, a couple of things for you. And I'm looking at your report and I appreciate you trying to abbreviate it, but what I learned a month ago is that people in attendance would like to hear that full report. So I'm going to prompt you on a couple of things, okay? tell me your report regarding the Maples Board. You're talking about what their current situation is and that they're considered to be fully occupied. I know that they're going to go through a transition with their leadership there, their exec. Can you elaborate on all of that, please?
Yeah, Megan Garza is now the administrator. They had to hold so many beds back for COVID. As of the 20th, that will go away. So they could go back up to the 78 bed occupancy, which would really help them out a lot financially. So that's what they're headed for. She also wanted everybody to know that majority of the people that they have admitted are Benzie County residents. Evan always likes to hear that. So I thought that was good. I was really impressed with their MERS funding, but by the same token, they dropped from 92 to 90% in by this last thing here. So I was still a little confused on the drug screening process. And the gal from MDHHS said that they don't screen for marijuana anymore. They screen for 9 substances and marijuana is not one of them. Don't know how that falls with the federal guidelines and way above my pay grade, but I don't know. I'm thinking with some of the changes that recently happened, that they may be looking to hire some of the folks that used to work there. There was one that they had to, because the vaccination requirement's gone. And there was one individual they made part-time because she did not want or had a waiver, but they wouldn't make them full-time. So there's a possibility that person go back as full-time. Anything to me would help offset the traveling nurse program, which is a huge expense. I guess I covered most of it. Doc wants to expand on it, but yeah.
In the road commission, they're going to be looking for a new leader there.
Yeah, they had 2 interviews. One was in-house and they should have had this before now. So I should know something Thursday, I think. Because they had split the Matt's job between about 4 people. Everybody was trying to do it and most of them, Scott, he had plenty to do to begin with, and I'm sure some of the other ones did. So, but it seems to be working. Did get a complaint at Blaine that they weren't following up on something, didn't return a call, but we'll talk about it. That happens.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
One question, is Megan interim or did they appoint her as director?
I believe
That's what I thought.
she's interim still.
Yeah,
But she's licensed.
right, yeah.
I never got it straight. They went on closed sessions. I don't know what they did.
Oh, yes, me. Just a couple of things for me. I did meet with Matt Coulson. He is our representative from the MMRMA to go over the renewal for next year. The renewal is looking fairly good. It's probably going to be a little more than previous years just because of the amount of claims and settlements that we have been a part of. But our net asset distribution, which is an amount of funding that they send back to us each year, our net asset distribution looks to be about $27,000 this year. So we'll go ahead and put that right towards our retention fund, simply for the fact that based on the settlements we've paid out, we're needing to add to that fund. But 27,000 is about in line of what we get every year for that. Things are plugging along in our office. I am working on lots of things. I don't even know what to say. So working on broadband, specifically with Tim Malone, as well as representatives from Merit still. Tim is going to come to a future meeting, probably the 26th, to just give the Board of Commissioners a nice update on what's happening with broadband, specifically because there's a lot of money that Benzie County and Cherry Capital are in receipt of for the expansion project. So that's very exciting. We're also working with Merit Broadband to develop a digital equity compass. I don't know, something popped up. a digital equity compass to really gauge where Benzie County is at when it comes to the use of broadband internet. We can expand it, but expanding it doesn't do anything if nobody's knows how to use it or is using it. So we're working on that as well. We're also working through the tower project. So the tower project, as you know, the state of Michigan funded Benzie County to put a tower up in Frankfurt. Motorola gave us a proposal that you all approved of right around $1.9 million. The state of Michigan is giving us $2.2 million. Our estimated amount that Benzie County needs to put for the fiber expansion piece of it is $351,000. That's an estimate. So based on what the tower is going to cost and what the state is giving us, the $350,000 allocation of ARPA dollars that we put towards that project, the majority of it won't be needed for that project specifically. So we will be having more conversations regarding ARPA because there's going to be a chunk of ARPA dollars that will need to be reallocated because we won't need them for that project. So that conversation will be coming down the road once we have a much more firm number on the expansion of the fiber to the tower itself. So there may be more money that we have to allocate there. Other than that, does anyone have any questions for me?
Had a chance to talk to Mercury.
I did sit down with Scott with Mercury Wireless, and sadly, he didn't have much information for me. So Mercury Wireless fully intends to expand in Benzie County. As you know, Mercury Wireless is one of the award recipients for the RDOF funding. And so they received a lot of the southern part of the county, specifically where you live. And so they fully intend to expand, but we're kind of low on their list. And so I said, well, what's that look like? How many years? They're like, well, by the deadline. I'm like, well, that's helpful. Yeah. And I said, well, and I let him know the frustration of the community of, you're encompassing our area, so nobody else can build there with the money that's available, yet you're putting us at the back burner. And they heard my frustration, but as a business, they're like, well, we have a plan, and your plan, we're starting 25, 26 at the earliest for Benzie County. So they are going to have an office in Traverse City, Mercury Wireless is, so they will become somewhat local to the region for services and those sorts of things, but they don't intend to actually begin the expansion into Benzie County until at least 26. I did ask him for some information that I could at least put on the website as far as some rough timing goes and those sorts of things. And he hasn't given that to me yet, but I'll follow up with him because I'd like to at least put something on the website as to timing and what their thoughts are. As far as an affordability standpoint, they're looking at roughly the same starting rate as Cherry Capital and the others. So they're all kind of in line as far as what they're charging for broadband internet. But unfortunately, that part of the county may not see internet until like 26.
You said the office in Traverse, is that noon or?
That's 25.
Well, that's in 25. Okay.
So
They'll be happy when I tell.
so there's not from a funding standpoint for our funding and the funding that's available at the state and federal level, we can't go after those dollars for those parcels for that part of the county. But if other private businesses, so if Cherry Capital or Charter, for instance, wants to build in those areas, they still could, but it'd have to be at their own expense. And everyone has their own business model as to what it takes for them to expand privately. So they could expand with private dollars. They can't use any of that free money that's out there for those because they're considered serve under RDOF. So that makes them ineligible for those funds. And so unfortunately, we're kind of at the will of Mercury unless another provider would like to build there with their own funding.
Tim had explained to me that they could go through Wayne Township
Mm-hmm.
if they were going to Manistee or something.
Yes.
But I kind of understood they couldn't hook anybody up on that stretch.
They can.
They
but
can.
Just not with government funding.
Correct.
So they couldn't use any of their grant funding.
Correct. Yeah, they'd have to use their own private business funds as well as the homeowner helping to assist that connection. So yeah, they can go through, they can't provide the service with the funding that's available at the moment.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
With Gary, with respect to the RDOF funds, and somebody else stepping in. It's very unlikely to happen because they have probably a 5-year business plan just with RDOF.
Yes.
And then next year, there's going to be even a bigger release of funds that will keep them equally as busy or not more so. So Mercury's kind of got us handcuffed at the
Yes.
moment. Do I remember right that the RDOF funds, they had like 10 years to spend them?
8 years. And
8 years.
so they have to build by, what is it? It's 8 years. So they have to build by like 2030 or right around there. So they have a 28. So they have a lot of time and they fully intend to build by that deadline. So, you know, Tim Malone actually reached out to them and said like, hey, you know, will you like give us these back, you know, relinquish them back to RDOF so they're available. And Mercury Wireless met him with a closed door and was like, nope, we're gonna build, but on our timeline. And so unfortunately, yes, we're handcuffed in a lot of ways because they're now encompassing those pieces of property in Benzie County. Yeah.
Katie, you were asked to at least sit in a discussion between Eclipse and
Mhm.
Cherry Capital to see if there was more opportunity for Eclipse.
Yes.
Part of that was a response to some community members also, not just the owners of each of those companies.
Mhm.
Can you share with us what the outcome of that was?
Sure. So I sat down with the two private businesses to kind of facilitate essentially. It wasn't really my place to do that because they are two private businesses that really need to work out their private matters on their own. But we were able to have a good conversation and we were able to commit to the two businesses communicating because really that's where things started to fizzle is the lack of communication. One business was reaching out, the other business wasn't responding. And so there really wasn't any communication happening, which I think is where the fizzle out happened. And so in that meeting, we were able to get everybody to commit to at least communicate with each other and try to come to some sort of agreement, relationship, something across the table. And so it is my understanding that they did at least sit down and have that coffee hour a couple of times. And Tim Malone of Cherry Capital did send an agreement over to Eclipse Communication with some outlines, because really what we're after is how do we need to work together? So originally Cherry Capital was looking at potentially absorbing Eclipse Communications, but Eclipse Communications didn't want to do that. And so rather than saying, hey, there's other ways we can work together, rather than absorbing us, the communication had just stopped. So at least now they're working together and saying, okay, we can work together on these elements. We need Eclipse Communications for X, Y, and Z, but not for A, B, C. And they're working to actually come to an agreement on those elements of where they actually can work together to expand broadband so that everybody is at the table. It's a similar relationship that Cherry Capital has with Peninsula Fiber Network. They don't work together on everything, but they're working together on elements. And so they're finally getting to those finalized elements with Eclipse Communication as to how they're going to work together going forward.
Sure.
Yeah.
And unrelated, but I want to say this publicly. I've been impressed with the amount of work you produce. You know, you obviously work efficiently. We've given you, my standards are very high. We've given you a lot of activity. So just a kudos for even having to step into that conversation that you really didn't even belong in.
Mhm. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I want to also acknowledge you, the reports that we've been getting from Cherry Capital. I mean, the bullet states that take you down have been really, really
good, adding
clarity for me since, again, I don't have all the history that everyone else has.
Yes.
And I get a lot of comments from individuals, you know, citizenry. So that helps out immensely. One of the things that I hope he's going to be touching, Malone is going to be touching, is the fiber getting into the town of Frankfurt. That's going to be one of my questions.
So that's the piece we were just talking about, the $351,000.
Okay,
So as far as the broadband updates go, every monthly update I am putting on the website. So for anybody who's wondering about updates on the project, right on the home page is a broadband link to a broadband page. I put the monthly updates on there for everybody. But that 351,000 that I was talking about, so that is going to expand the fiber from the intersection up here in Benzonia down to the tower it'll be up to Frankfurt to get it from the
downtown.
tower to downtown.
Mhm.
What we're working to cover is for our purposes, that tower, which covers
county.
for the county. So what I'm looking at is expanding that hardware to the tower. It would be up to Frankfurt to bring that fiber further into their city. And where and what and how that happens. I'm leaving that to Frankfurt and Cherry Capital and Eclipse and whoever else. What
Figure it
I'm
out.
focusing on is our piece, which is from the intersection to the tower to light up that tower.
Okay, so thank you for going to that meeting and for those minutes and everything. Yeah, I guess that was my last question on that, since we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, and I know Tim was planning to connect with the city to talk about what their future wishes are and how they could contribute to an expansion project further into the city. But I'm allowing those conversations to happen because we don't really have a part in those pieces of the conversations.
And then the ARPA funds, so then that's going to be released from there. So then are we going to have $300,000 worth of ARPA funds?
I don't know how much.
Okay.
So the 351 is an estimate as to what we're still going to need. We accepted a proposal from Motorola for just over 1.9 million. There's 2.2 available, obvious difference there. The proposal is that it's a proposal. So I don't know how many ARPA dollars are going to be put back on the table.
Okay.
But there will be, and so we as a commission will have to decide how to reallocate those funds by the end of 2024.
Yeah. Thank you.
All righty, move on to committee appointments. We have one, Gaylord Jowett for a reappointment to DHHS.
I make the motion to reappoint Gaylord.
There you go.
Janine
Oh, it's roll-
supports.
oh, yeah. I gotta read this. That the Board of Commissioners reappoint Gaylord Jowett to a 3-year term expiring October 31, 26 on the Department of Health and Human Services Board, seat previously held by Gaylord, as recommended by the ad hoc committee.
Janine still supports.
Motion and support, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, so move. Unfinished business? New business? Any correspondence? Brings us to our final public input.
My name is Annie Browning from Benzonia Township, and I just wanted to, something that Katie said earlier today that really resonated with me and captured a lot of things that I'm thinking and working on for the village of Beulah. That was when she said, can't be the same old relationship. And I'm personally am struggling with that in the village because there's a lot of things that we've set up that have worked for years, if not decades, but things have changed and so many more people now are coming through here, tourists and what have you. So it's just a struggle all around to try and update things. And so I was reflecting on that further, and I'm really glad to be involved in the Village of Beulah Planning Commission. So we're trying to plan for these things a little bit ahead of time. It's not going to be real accurate, but at least we will be aware of some potential future outcomes. So I'm really just pleased with that. And I was really glad with the way the meeting turned out today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a couple things. She reminded me that there was another court precedent set at the meeting, at the court hearing last Tuesday. The notice of intent to claim remaining proceeds was utilized by one of our local banks to recoup some lost mortgage funds from a tax foreclosed property. And we took it to court expressly because it needed to be on paper. And so I'm not sure how many banks downstate are doing that kind of thing, but it's not happening all over. And so it's nice to have a court case on the books that says this happened and that it, this is how it works. So it was nice to have that happen. There are 3 demolitions happening from the blight elimination grants, round one funding for the Land Bank Authority. And Rhonda alluded to the one in Frankfurt happening as soon as Consumers gets there. I'm hoping that that has happened by now, but we wait patiently. The other two are happening because of the court case we went to last week. The RFP is out. It will eliminate 2 blighted structures in the village of Thompsonville. And those 2 properties are on a total of 5 lots. So that frees up 5 lots for housing. So this blight elimination grant for $120,000 given to the Land Bank Authority will allow us to help provide housing for 5 and apartments for 12 in the city of Frankfurt.
Nice.
So that's not terrible.
Nope.
We're getting there. The other thing that's kind of precedent setting is this community coordinator position. I've had conversations at the State Land Bank and at the Association of Land Banks regarding this position, and everybody is eager to hear and see what we get and how does that work, because there's a lot of communities that are looking for the same thing. So hopefully we pull the trigger on that and we become the leader of that little pack. So, yes. So anyway, that's all I wanted.
Thank you. Anybody else? Close public input, look for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
And
Jeanette Sports.
or whoever.
Motion and
Yeah.
support, all in favor say yes. Aye.
Aye.